for Oklahoma, so it's a database that houses all controlled drug substance sales in the state.
And it's administered by the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs.
That's right.
And it includes information about scheduled substances that are dispensed by doctors and pharmacies, prescribed by doctors and dispensed by pharmacies, correct?
Correct. Schedules 2 through 5.
And I believe you explained that the PMP is a way in which you can determine whether somebody was prescribed a particular Schedule II drug. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Do you know that the PMP is also used by OBN to identify doctor shopping?
Yes, I did know that.
And the Department of Health was first authorized to access that data in November of 2013, correct?
Correct.
You were not given retroactive access. You could not look at data prior to that time, correct?
As far as I know, we can. We just elected to use the data from 2013 moving forward.
And it wasn't until the fall of 2018 that your department linked the decedents in the UPSS, your system, directly with the PMP records, correct?
Correct. Sometime at least in 2018 is when we started.
So there was about a 5-year gap between the time you're authorized to have access and when you actually linked the data with the PMP system, correct?
Correct.
So one of the things that you discussed with Ms. Baldwin was Dr. Piercefield's study, correct?
Correct.
Did Dr. Piercefield use only publicly available ARCOS data?
I think so. I think it was data that was available on their website.
I'm sorry?
Oh, I said I think so. I think it was data available on their website. I can check her report.
Well, are you familiar with the limitations of the public data, the public ARCOS data?
No, I guess.
Okay, so, well, do you understand that the publicly available data does not provide information about the specific brand of drug shipped? Do you understand that?
Oh, yes, I do understand that.
So you understand that limitation of the publicly available ARCOS data, correct?
Yes, the publicly available ARCOS data is just aggregated data on each substance.
Right, so when you say each substance, you're talking about the molecule, correct?
Well, each prescription drug. So fentanyl, oxycodone, hydrocodone.
Right, those are molecules, they're not brand drugs, correct?
Well, I mean, they're sold as branded drugs. It's branded or generic drugs.
Right, but from this public data, you can't tell what the brand is. You only see fentanyl, hydrocodone, oxycodone, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so you can't tell whether the fentanyl sales that are tracked by that publicly available ARCOS data are sales of Ventura, Actique, Duragesic, any other branded product, a generic product. You can't tell that from that data, correct?
No, I cannot tell that from that data.
Okay, so let's go ahead and put up, it was Exhibit S1569, Your Honor. That was what we were just looking at during her direct examination. It's the increase in unintentional medication overdose deaths. Do I have permission to put that up, Your Honor?
Yes, you do.
Thank you. So if we look at the second page, do you have that up there with you?
I do.
Okay, great. If you look at the second page of it, and under, let's see, under the section methods, the last sentence of the first paragraph of that section, it says, a case was defined, let me just ask you a quick question about it. With respect to this study, she only looked at unintentional deaths in which at least one prescription or over-the-counter medication contributed to the death, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and I won't need to read that sentence because that's the point of the sentence that I was about to point out to you. And the Piercefield data specifically excludes overdose deaths involving only illicit drugs, alcohol, inhalants, or poisons in which medications were not mentioned. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
And so what that means is that the Piercefield data does not include illicit drug deaths unless there was also a prescription or over-the-counter drug found in the body, correct?
Correct.
And the study addresses deaths from 1994 to 2006, correct?
Correct.
And you relied upon that data for some of your analysis in this case for that time period, correct?
I did.
All right, so if we look back at the first page of the document and look at the second paragraph on the bottom right, let's put that up, and if you can blow that up for us where it starts of all the prescriptions, right there, yeah. So I want you to look at that. There, Dr. Piercefield notes, of all prescription drugs sold in the United States, the single most prescribed medication in 2005 was hydrocodone, an opioid analgesic, correct?
Correct, that's what that said.
And it goes on to say approximately 100 million prescriptions were written for hydrocodone, outnumbering prescriptions for the second most popular medication, atorvastatin, with 63 million prescriptions, and the most commonly prescribed antibiotic, amoxicillin. Do you see that?
I do.
And that's consistent with your understanding that hydrocodone is the most prescribed drug sold in Oklahoma, correct?
That's my understanding.
And then let's go down a little bit further on the next page in that same paragraph, Janice. If you can blow that up. A few lines down, it starts non-medical use. We could pick up with that sentence.
Oh,
It's like 4 lines down on the top. See if we can blow that up. There we go. Non-medical use of prescription drugs increased 81% during 1992 to 2003. Do you see that?
I do.
And you have no reason to dispute that, correct?
I do not.
And right below that, it goes on to say that an estimated 49 million people, or 1 in 5 people aged more than 12 years old in the United States have used prescription drugs non-medically at some point in their lifetime, correct?
Correct, that's what that says.
And just to be clear, when we're talking about non-medical use, that means that these folks are not taking the medications as directed by a prescribing physician, correct?
That's my understanding, but I would need to look back at the actual question that was asked in the survey to know for sure.
But that's consistent with what your understanding of non-medical use would be, correct?
Yes.
And also, Dr. Piercefield, like you, relied on Oklahoma Medical Examiner data, correct?
Correct.
So let's turn to page 5 of this document and go to table 2. I believe Ms. Baldwin focused on table 2 during her direct examination and asked you a few questions about it. This is a table delineating individual substances involved in unintentional medication overdose deaths in Oklahoma from 1994 to 2006, correct?
Correct.
And the table 2 lists a number of pharmaceutical and illicit substances, correct?
Correct.
Tramadol is not on that list, is it?
It's not.
We've talked about several of these on the list. I'd like to focus on the third drug identified there, alprazolam. Do you see that?
I do.
And that's the third overall with 320 deaths accounted for in this chart, correct?
Correct.
That is not an opioid, is it?
No, it's not.
And that's the generic name for Xanax, is that correct?
That's correct.
So this article, the Dr. Piercefield's article, was published in 2010, correct?
Correct.
And it was the impetus, I believe you said, for the creation of your UPSS.
Correct. So we decided to continue her work and continue to collect data, at least on unintentional poisonings more broadly.
Okay, so let's go to page 6 of the document. And if we could focus on the right-hand column, the first full paragraph that starts with studies. You can blow that up, Janice, please. Thank you. If you see in that paragraph, it says that studies from other states indicate that most decedents do not have prescriptions for medications involved in unintentional overdose deaths. Do you see that?
I do.
And the next sentence says, collaboration and data sharing with the state prescription drug monitoring program can potentially remedy this data gap, correct?
Correct.
And the PDMP that's referenced there, that's the same thing as the PMP that you just testified about, correct?
Yes, it's the same.
And again, this article was issued in 2010, right?
Correct.
And you were given authority to access the Oklahoma PMP in 2013, correct?
Correct.
And you didn't start linking the files as suggested here until 2018, correct?
That's correct. We didn't actually get access to the data in 2013. Like, we didn't receive data at that time. And then there was also a change from an in-house system to a vendor in 2016, so there were a lot of delays in receiving the full data set before we could actually start working with it.
All right, so you were authorized in 2013, but you didn't actually do any linking until 2018.
Correct.
And so to date, you have not identified the number of prescription opioid overdose-related deaths for those people who have had a lawful prescription from their doctor, correct?
Could you ask the question again?
Sure. To date, you have not identified the number of deaths for people who have had a lawful prescription for the opioid from their physician. Is that correct?
We have not published any reports related to that yet, no.
And to date, you have not published any reports that quantify the number of prescription overdose deaths related to the use of diverted drugs, correct?
No, we have not.
And one other question along the same lines, Ms. Nguyen, you've not published any reports that quantify the number of prescription overdose deaths related to doctor shopping, correct?
No, we have not. As I said, we've linked data to the PMP, and my coworker, that's the PMP epidemiologist, has done a lot of work with that and actually presented it to conferences recently related to those linkages, but we haven't published any actual reports.
And I want to look at one other thing. Just above, we can put that back up, Janice, please. It's again at page 6, the same page we were on. Focusing on the top right column, the very, very top this time, in addition. So here in the Dr. Piercefield study, it notes, in addition, medical examiner data often lack information related to the source of drugs. Therefore, it was unknown whether medications had been the decedent's own medication obtained from a valid prescription or if medication had been diverted illegally, correct?
Correct.
And
That's what
she's
that
talking,
says.
and she's talking about the data that she considered for purposes of her analysis, correct?
Yes.
And earlier you told me you relied upon similar data to what Dr. Piercefield relied upon, correct?
Correct.
You share your data with different state agencies, correct?
Yes.
For example, you share it with the OBN, the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics,
Correct.
and you share it with the Oklahoma Healthcare Authority.
Correct.
You also share your data with the Oklahoma University of College of Pharmacy
Correct.
and the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services, correct?
Correct.
So any issues or limitations on the data that you have analyzed would also affect the other agency's ability to analyze the data as well, correct? Whatever those may be.
Whatever those may be. I mean, specifically related to this, that's not data that I've provided as far as a percentage of decedents that had a prescription or anything like that.
Right, you don't have that data.
Right. Well, we have collected that within our UP system, but because the medical examiner may not have the complete medical record for a decedent, it's going to be an underestimate of the number of decedents that had a prescription for a drug. So we felt that linkages to the P&P would be a more accurate determination of whether or not the decedent had a prescription.
Right, and that's what you've started to do in 2018, correct?
Correct.
I'd like to put up J3929. This is a document that was admitted yesterday, Your Honor, if it's okay to put this up.
Yes.
I have copies. I don't believe you have this up there. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
So this is an injury prevention service document. So this is from your department, correct?
Correct.
And I'm interested in the first story that's shown on this document. It's called Tracking Overdose Deaths, Meth Surpasses Opioids. Do you see that?
I do.
And in the center column in the middle, you see that there's a sentence that says, from 2007 to 2013, the rate of unintentional prescription opioid overdoses remained fairly stable. Do you see that?
I do.
And then it goes on to say, from 2013 to 2017, Oklahoma had a 43% decrease in its prescription opioid overdose death rate, correct?
Correct.
And then it explains that from 2007 to 2017, the rate of methamphetamine-related overdose deaths increased by 600%, right?
Correct.
So what we understand from this is that prescription opioid deaths are falling and methamphetamine deaths are rising substantially, correct?
Yes, over the past 5 years of data.
And is that consistent with your understanding of the data?
Yes.
And the majority of the fall in prescription opioid deaths has obviously occurred in the past 4 years based on this data, correct?
Right, from 2013 to 2017.
So let's focus on the chart in this cover letter, in this bulletin. And would you agree here that in the chart, the methamphetamine line crosses over the prescription opioids line in 2017, correct?
Yes, for 2017, there were more methamphetamine-related overdoses.
As compared to prescription opioids, correct?
Correct, just for 2017.
You previously testified that occasionally, or actually approximately half the overdose deaths that you look at, there's more than one substance involved, correct?
Correct, I think it's a little less than half now.
Okay, approximately half is fair to say?
Yeah,
And when there are multiple drugs involved or identified as the cause of death, you don't determine the relative contribution of each drug, correct?
no, I do not.
And is it your understanding then that at times drugs are included in the cause of death when they are merely incidental to the death? That can happen, correct?
I am not aware of that. That would be a question for the medical examiner. They're the ones that make the determination as far as drugs included in the cause of death.
Okay, so I'd like to show you a document. Can I have J3845?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
So I'd like you to take a look at this document. Do you recognize the presentation attached to this? I believe you were showing it at your deposition.
Yes, it looks familiar.
And this is from a training that the chief toxicologist, Dr. Byron Curtis, and former chief investigator Timothy Dwyer provided, correct?
Correct.
And you recall that training?
Vaguely. It's been a few years, but I do recall.
Well, and to your knowledge, this was the only training that the CME's office ever gave to your department about investigation procedures and determining the manner and cause of death, correct?
I don't know that I would say that. We have a contract with the medical examiner's office, and they provide a training for our office every year on a topic that's determined by us. So those topics can vary from year to year.
But as you testified at your deposition, or do you recall testifying that this is the only training that you remember?
Related to the only training I remember.
Related to overdose death investigation procedures?
Yes, this is the only one I recall related to overdose death investigation.
So let's turn to page 14 of the exhibit. There's a slide there. Your Honor, I'd like to move to admit this document.
Any objections from the state?
Objection.
J3845 will be admitted.
And may I publish it, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Janice, if you can pull up page 14 of this exhibit. Thank you.
I'm on the wrong page. I was
And
on
this
the page
slide
with
is,
the fish.
are you there?
No, I was on a page with a fish, so I was wondering where we were
All
going.
right,
Okay.
thank you. This slide is titled Multi-Drug Toxicity. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And if on the right-hand side, the second bullet down, it notes some list all the drugs, including those where contribution is unclear. Do you see that?
I do.
And is it your understanding that what it's talking about is some medical examiners list all the drugs, including those where contribution is clear, correct?
Can you ask the question again?
What that's referring to when it says some, it's
Mhm.
referring to some medical examiners, correct?
Yes, that's what it looks like.
And I believe you testified at your deposition that you don't recall what was said about that at that presentation, correct?
I do not.
And you've never explicitly asked anyone in the medical examiner's office to only include drugs where the contribution is clear. Is that correct?
I don't know that I've ever asked that in those terms.
Have you ever asked that in any terms?
Well, we've had discussions with them about what they include or don't include, and so I don't remember exactly what was said, but I don't think I would have said it in exactly that way.
And you would have instructed them to only include drugs where it was clear that it was the singular cause of death?
Well, I wouldn't instruct them to do anything because they're, like I said before, credentialed professionals, so I trust their opinions.
Are you aware that you can take that down, Janice, thank you. Are you aware that the CDC has estimated that 50 million people in the United States live with chronic pain?
I have seen a CDC report to that effect.
And you have not tried to calculate how many years of life have been saved by prescription opioids for the treatment of chronic pain, have you?
How many years of life have been saved?
Your Honor,
Yes.
this is outside the scope of my representation.
Your Honor, I'm entitled to explore her opinions in this case, and to the extent she's calculating information about the impact of these drugs, one of the impacts of these drugs relates to their positive impacts as well. And I'd like to ask her whether she did anything to consider those issues, Your Honor.
May I respond to that, Your Honor? The scope of my direct is the impact of opioid mortality, not the impact of opioids generally.
Right, and in considering the impact of opioids, negative, positive, Your Honor, I think we're entitled to explore both sides. It will just take a moment, Your Honor.
I'll give you 1 minute leeway.
Thank you.
Rule.
Can you ask the question again?
Sure, you
I
have not
apologize.
attempted to calculate how many years of life have been saved by the use of prescription opioids to treat chronic pain, have you?
I have not. So I work in the injury prevention service, and so we look mostly at injuries.
And you've not calculated how many years of life have been improved by the use of prescription opioids for chronic pain have you?
I have not, again, because I would be looking at people that have overdosed on the drug.
Can we put up Court Exhibit 16, Your Honor? It's a demonstrative that plaintiffs used in opening and was shown to this witness on direct.
Yes.
Let's go ahead and put it up. So you've seen this exhibit before, correct?
Yes, I have.
And so this is the chart that shows that you utilized Dr. Piercefield's data from 1994 to 2006, correct?
Yes, correct.
And from 2007 to 2017, you used the data from your surveillance system, correct?
Yes, correct.
So I have a question. The title of the slide says unintentional prescription drug-related overdose deaths rates. Do you see that?
I do.
So these death rates include all prescription drug-related overdose deaths, not just opioids?
Correct.
And this chart doesn't tell us anything about whether anyone died from an overdose due to a Janssen manufactured Duragesic patch, correct?
No, not in this specific graph.
It does not, correct?
Correct.
And it doesn't tell us anything about whether anyone died from using a Nucynta or Nucynta ER medication, correct?
Correct.
And even for opioid-related deaths that are included here, along with other prescription overdose deaths, correct?
Correct.
They're included. For the opioid-related deaths that are reflected in the chart, they are not limited to folks who had lawful prescriptions for those medications, correct?
Correct.
And with respect to this particular chart, the overdose deaths are not limited to folks who, or let me say this a different way. These death rates that you've indicated here, they include folks who would have overdosed from prescription pills obtained from a pill mill, correct?
They could have.
And they could include folks who overdosed on prescription pills obtained through the black market, correct?
Correct.
And they could include folks who obtained their prescription pills from doctor shopping
Correct.
or from taking it from someone else's medicine cabinet.
Yes.
I believe you testified earlier that there's a relationship between opioid sales and opioid-related mortality, correct?
Correct.
And the connection, the relationship that you're drawing is temporal, correct?
Correct.
You're not offering an opinion on what caused the increase in opioid-related mortality and morbidity, correct?
I'm not. I'm just stating that as sales increased, the deaths increased.
The temporal connection, correct?
Correct.
And on your direct examination, when you explained what led you to the calculation of 156 10 microgram hydrocodone pills for every Oklahoman in 2017, you indicated that different opioids have different strengths, correct?
Correct. 156 10 milligram.
Correct. And just as different opioids are prescribed for different, and that's the same as is understanding that the different opioids are prescribed for different reasons, correct?
Correct.
And different opioids you'll recognize work in different ways.
I mean, I'm not a medical doctor, so I wouldn't want to.
Speculate about that?
Yeah.
But you can imagine that different opioids work in different ways. Fentanyl operates differently than oxycodone, correct? Is that fair to say?
Object to the more mass scenario.
Sustain.
Well, do you know that a medication like Actique, for example, is powerful for the treatment of breakthrough cancer pain that can be taken every 4 hours? Do you know that? I don't know if you do or not. I'm just asking if you know.
Same objection.
Overruled. Can I answer?
I do not know that.
Well, if you had used in your calculation, understanding, I'll give you a hypothetical, assuming that these drugs act differently and have different strengths. If you had used a drug like Actique rather than hydrocodone, do you know how many lozenges, Actique lozenges, you would have had to have calculated?
I do not.
So what you did is you lumped all of the drugs together, added up the MMEs, and then divided them up as if only 10 microgram hydrocodone pills were prescribed in the state. Is that how you did your calculation?
10 milligram.
I'm
Yes.
saying microgram,
So-
I apologize, milligram.
So we just, summed up the total MMEs for all prescriptions dispensed in the state during that time and essentially divided by 10.
And you indicated that you had heard at least portions of the opening statement, correct?
Correct.
And during the defendant's opening, there was a reference to the testimony of Miss Cindy Fain. Do you recall that?
I have seen the slide that was shown, but I did not hear the testimony
Can
around
we
it.
put that slide up? Is this the slide you're referring to?
Yes.
And here, it reflects Ms. Fain's testimony that some pharmacies have 1,000 taken. I have had pharmacies have 500,000 taken once or twice a year. Question, how often would these types of numbers, more than 1,000 taken, would you see these types of numbers as far as a loss or theft? Answer, once or twice weekly. That's consistent with what you recall was played during the opening statement?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to this. This hasn't been offered into evidence. This is totally outside the scope of my direct examination.
Your Honor, this has already been shown and published to the court, and she has made some calculations with respect to amounts of drugs, and I would like to ask some questions in light of this testimony here.
Your Honor, Cindy Hamilton Fain worked for the Oklahoma Pharmacy Board, and if the defendants would like to examine her, they can call her in a trial and put her on the stand. Ms. Wynn is here as an epidemiologist to testify on opioid overdose mortality. This has absolutely nothing to do with her direct examination. She has not worked for the pharmacy board, and I strongly object to this line of questioning.
I haven't asked a question yet, Your Honor, but I only have 2 questions here to ask.
I will, you can ask the questions, the state can renew its objection, I'll decide them.
Okay, so my question to you is, if there are 500,000 diverted pills twice a year, that would be 1 million pills, correct?
Can you ask the question again?
500,000 diverted pills twice a year would equal 1 million pills, correct?
Your Honor, can we at least first ask her if she's ever even read this deposition before, or has any knowledge of this testimony whatsoever?
She's already seen it, Your Honor, she said, but regardless, I'm actually just asking a math question right now.
What she said was she saw a slide, she didn't listen to the testimony. I don't believe she's ever read this testimony.
I'm going to overrule the objection.
Sorry, one more time,
No
if you don't mind
problem.
asking the
It's just
question.
a simple math question.
Okay.
You're good at math, so I think this will
Okay.
be easy for you. 500,000 diverted pills twice a year would equal 1 million pills, correct?
500,000 times 2 is 1 million, but I'm not familiar with Ms. Hamilton's Fain or what she was referring to exactly, or if those are pills or
And
what.
that's fine.
so-
My question isn't related to that right now. It's a math question for you. So
Okay.
1 million pills. And I would just ask, what would it look like if we put 1 million diverted pills on the stand in front of you?
That would be a lot of pills.
And you were assuming that the pills that were put in front of you, the 156 pills, would have been prescribed by a doctor, correct?
Well, they're placebo, so, I said they're placebo. Maybe I didn't understand the question.
Yes, but hypothetically, in your hypothetical, you were trying to illustrate what 156 pills prescribed by a doctor would look like.
Oh, correct. And those were prescribed by a doctor because that's data from the PNP. So those were drugs that were actually dispensed to a patient from a pharmacy.
Well, this morning you testified that you thought there was an oversupply of prescription opioids, correct?
Well, yes, I said that was a lot of pills for what one adult to have.
And beyond that, you also gave broader testimony saying that you generally believe that there was an oversupply of prescription opioids, correct?
Correct.
By how much?
I don't have an answer to that question.
You don't know how many prescriptions should have been written?
No, I don't.
And you don't know what number it would take for you to have told Ms. Baldwin that there wasn't an oversupply of prescription opioids, is that right?
I don't, no.
If you don't know what the number is, how can you say it's too many?
Oh, is that a question?
That's a question.
Okay. Can you ask it again? I apologize.
If you don't know what the right number is, how can you say it was too many?
Well, my testimony was just based on the large number of overdose deaths and that I don't think we've seen a decrease in chronic pain in Oklahoma. So the amount supplied was not effective for what it was intended.
And do you have any idea who should be making the decisions? How about the FDA? Do you believe the FDA should be making those decisions?
I think it should.
I'm gonna check, it's completely outside. At
Sustain the
FDA.
objection.
One more question for you. Do you have any idea which Oklahoma patients shouldn't have received their doctor's opioid prescription? Do you have any idea?
I don't know specifically.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I just have a few follow-up questions.
Sure.
Ms. Lynn, I just have a couple questions for you. So you were asked earlier about how many overdose deaths you've seen that involved fentanyl and heroin, or fentanyl and cocaine, or fentanyl and methamphetamine. I think it's referred to as speedball.
Yes.
Do you know how many deaths from 2007 to 2017 involved fentanyl and heroin?
There was one death.
One death?
One.
And do you know how many deaths from 2007 to 2017 involved cocaine and fentanyl in the state of Oklahoma?
17 for that 11-year period.
Okay. And do you know how many deaths from 2007 to 2017 involved methamphetamine and fentanyl?
68, so it was around 11% of all fentanyl-related overdose deaths.
Can you put up that graph? Now, Ms. Wynn, you were also asked about alprazolam,
Correct.
and is that a benzodiazepine?
It is.
From 2007 to 2012, how many benzodiazepine deaths involved in opioid?
I think it was around 80 to 90%.
And for that same period, how many opioid deaths involved a benzodiazepine?
33%.
And do you know how many deaths involved just a benzodiazepine?
Less than 1%.
Okay. Ms. Wynn, I'm going to direct you to this chart that you created. So as an epidemiologist, are you aware You talked about how between 1994 and 1997, there was a pretty low amount of overdose deaths involving prescription drugs, correct?
Yes.
Do you know that if in Oklahoma there was a mass migration of criminals into the state at this time in 1996?
Not that I'm aware of.
Do you know if there was a mass migration of drug addicts from other states that came into Oklahoma in 1996?
Not that I'm aware of.
Do you know if there's some sort of mass infectious disease that caused people to just suddenly use opioids and start diverting them around 1996?
Not that I'm aware of.
But what happened after 1996 in terms of opioid sales?
Opioid sales began to increase, at least starting in 1997 to 1998, the first 2 years of data that were available.
So the supply of opioids increased?
Yes, so from 1997 to 2013, the supply increased ninefold.
And opioid deaths also increased?
Yes, opioid deaths also increased.
I have no further questions.
So thank you.
Your Honor, may the witness be excused.
Do I just leave these here?
Mr. Beckworth.
Your Honor, at this time, I would tell the court you might want to turn the air conditioner down a little lower. We're going to show video. But I think the questioning was riveting, so maybe that will help. But at this time, we'll call by video designation Bert Rosen. He was a corporate representative of Purdue and the moderator and creator of the Pain Care Forum, of which Johnson & Johnson was a member. I think with the defendant's counter designations, this runs about an hour and 30, hour 25. And I'll approach, if you'll let me, with the exhibits that Your Honor will see. They're a little out of order of the sequence of how they actually occurred because of where their counter designations are. Thank you. What's the best way for you? Do you want this out a little bit? So you want this out, or?
I think I've got it here.
I can just turn it a little bit that way. You'll be surrounded by screens.
I know.
Excuse me.
Mr. Ottaway.
Yeah, I think this is a deposition we were not told would be played in this order, but we have an objection. It is a Purdue issue, and I think that's subject to previous motions in limine, and we renew that objection here.
Thank you, Mr. Ottaway. Objection.
Go ahead.
No, can we have just 1 minute to get the run report to
Sure.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Should we take just a brief 5-minute break? Is that good?
That'd be
That would be
great.
great,
We
thank
get it
you.
put
Yeah,
on.
why don't we just start back up at 2:20?
Thank you, Your Honor.
go ahead and be seated. Are we ready to begin?
Yes, Your Honor.
With overruling my objection
Yes,
previously.
we'll note on the record your objection, overruled, and we'll allow the video deposition of Bert Rosen to proceed. Mr. Beckler?
Mrs. Ball has informed me she would like to make the pill bottle a court's exhibit. I'm not sure what number we're on.
That'd be Court's Exhibit 42.
Okay, can I just take a picture of it? Or-
Sure.
Okay. Just like the boxes, because I think we have to return these.
Sure.
We'll print one and bring in that number.
Okay. 42. The placebos. 156 of them, I believe.
Yes, sir.
It's like
Can you tell the jury your name, please, sir? Bert Rosen. Mr. Rosen, you're here today as an employee of Purdue, is that correct?
I am.
You currently employed by Purdue?
I am.
What's your job title?
I am Vice President of Federal Government Relations.
And you've been at Purdue since, 2001?
December of 2001,
In
yes.
fact, in December of 2001, you interviewed for the first time for a job at Purdue, right?
Well, I actually interviewed prior to that, but that's when I actually started my job.
When you interviewed for that job, you interviewed with a man by the name of Michael Friedman,
I did.
who became the CEO of Purdue.
I'm not so sure that he wasn't already the CEO. I can't remember, to be honest.
So Friedman, the CEO, interviewed you?
I did interview him, yes.
And you also interviewed with someone named Howard Udell,
I did.
Chief Legal Officer.
That's correct.
Those two individuals were involved in hiring you for Purdue, correct?
They were, yes, sir.
And you've worked for Purdue since 2001, correct?
December of 2001 was my start date,
You
yes.
you still work for them today.
I did.
Now, you are a lobbyist, correct?
I am.
You're a registered lobbyist.
Yes, I am.
You've lived in Washington, D.C. for over 30 years.
I moved to Washington, D.C. in 1973. I lived there till 1978. I moved away from Washington, D.C. in 1978, and then I came back in the early 80s.
And you've been there since the 80s.
I have, yes,
So
sir.
you are an inside the Beltway, Washington, D.C. lobbyist,
Yes,
correct?
I am.
Let me finish my questions.
Yes.
Make sure you take time so that you are talking over each other as court reporters.
So let's just start that over. You are an inside the Beltway, Washington, D.C. lobbyist, correct?
That is correct.
But you're not just an inside the Beltway, Washington, D.C. lobbyist, are you?
I don't understand your question.
Well, you're an inside the Beltway, Washington, D.C. lobbyist for Purdue.
That's correct.
But you're not just a lobbyist, are you, sir?
I'm not sure I understand your question. Maybe you could be more specific.
Well, you're also a lawyer,
I did go to law school, yes.
and therefore you are a lawyer.
I went to law school. I'm not a practicing lawyer. I'm not a member of the bar.
But you are a lawyer.
I did go to law school when I graduated, yes.
So you're a lawyer for the drug company Purdue.
Yes, I am.
So you're an inside the Beltway, Washington, D.C. lobbyist for a drug company, correct?
Correct.
You're an inside the Beltway lobbyist who's also a lawyer at a drug company, correct?
That's correct. I have a legal degree.
You bear the title vice president, correct?
Yes, I did.
And you have been in Washington, D.C. for over 30 years.
I haven't done arithmetic, but yes, over 30 years.
And during the last 17 or 18 years, you've been directing federal policy on behalf of Purdue there inside the Beltway in Washington, D.C., haven't you?
I've just begun my 17th year, yes.
And how many times have you been here to our great state of Oklahoma?
This is my first trip to Oklahoma.
So you've been working for Purdue as a drug company lawyer and lobbyist for over 17 years, directing national policy on opioid use and legislation in this country. And this is the first time you've ever been in the state of Oklahoma. Is that true?
That is true.
Now, you were hired by somebody by the name of Howard Udell. He was one of the people that hired you, right?
That is correct.
And Howard Udell, he was your direct boss
That's correct.
from 2001 until sometime in 2008, right?
At the time he left the company, yes.
He's who supervised you.
That's correct.
He's who hired you.
He's one of the people.
He's who directed your employment.
That's correct.
Now, Howard Udell's a lawyer, too.
He was.
He wasn't just any lawyer, he was the lawyer for Purdue, right? He was their chief legal counsel, right?
That's correct.
But Howard Udell wasn't just chief legal counsel for Purdue, he was something else, wasn't he?
Again, I don't understand what else was he.
Well, he's an admitted federal criminal, right?
There is a record. I forgot exactly what the charge was. He did plead guilty to a strict liability charge back in 2007.
He pled guilty for his role as chief legal officer of Purdue for the crimes it committed, right?
Yeah, there's a public record on that, that's correct.
And he didn't just go before a jury and have some jury find him guilty. He actually admitted it and signed his name to a federal document where he pled guilty, right?
I assume that's right. I mean, I have no actual knowledge, or I wasn't party to that. But
Well, from 2001 to 2008, you worked under him directly.
I did, yes.
A lawyer.
That's correct.
You're a lawyer.
Yes.
And you sit there and tell this jury you're not sure what he pled guilty to?
I don't really recall the specifics of it. That's exactly what I'm saying. I certainly read about it back in 2008, 10 or 11 years ago, but that was not really my area of responsibility, and I don't know at this moment I couldn't recite to you the actual charge.
So as a Washington, D.C. lobbyist and lawyer who worked directly under Howard Udell for over 7 years and took orders and instruction from him, you can't tell this jury that you knew why he pled guilty to a federal crime?
Again, I find that a difficult question to answer. I don't really know. As I understood it, when it happened, it was a strict liability charge, and there was no defense to it because of the nature of it. But I never studied it, and I can't recite it to you 10 years later.
In your testimony, there was no defense to the crime he was charged with, right? That's what you just said.
I said it was a strict liability charge, as I recall. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you didn't just take direction from Howard Udell, you took direction from Mr. Friedman as well, correct?
Technically, yes.
Mr. Friedman was the CEO of Purdue.
That's correct.
And Mr. Friedman was somebody that oversaw what you did. He was where the buck stopped, correct?
He oversaw everything, yes.
Well, actually, the buck didn't stop with him. He reported to the board, which included all the Sacklers that were on the board, right?
He would report to the board, yes.
Which included the Sacklers.
There were members of the Sackler family on the board.
And from time to time, you were on something called the CEAC, which also reported to the board, correct?
I don't think that's correct. We didn't report to the board. We reported to whoever we reported to. People on that committee were from various parts of the company. Each of them had different people they reported to.
Including the board.
Well, I've never had any direct reporting to the board. Ultimately, I suppose everybody who works for a company has some responsibility. Not directly necessarily, but indirectly.
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you, we're going to go over some documents that I think will show you that you were directly involved with the board, but you can answer that when you come to it.
That'd be fine.
But let's go back to Mr. Friedman. He wasn't just the CEO, he also was an admitted criminal, correct?
Same charge that he had pled guilty to, as I recall, yes.
Your boss, Mr. Friedman, pled guilty to what you described to be an indefensible federal crime.
I said they pled guilty to a strict liability crime.
Okay. So during the 2001 to 2008 period, let me just get this straight, so we develop our day together today, you were directly supervised by a drug company lawyer who pled guilty to a federal crime related to Purdue's conduct with Oxycontin. True?
That's true.
And that's the same gentleman that hired you.
One of the people who interviewed me and hired me, yes.
You also were hired by and reported to the CEO of Purdue, Mr. Friedman, who also pled guilty to a federal crime related to Purdue's conduct with Oxycontin, correct?
Again, I reported to Howard Udell, who reported to Michael Friedman, yes.
And your ultimate employer was not those two individuals, it was Purdue itself, correct?
That's correct.
And you understand that Purdue also pled guilty to a federal crime.
Yes, I did.
In fact, Purdue didn't just plead guilty to a federal crime, it pled guilty to a federal felony, correct?
I believe that was correct.
At any point in time, did you go to anyone at Purdue after either of those two men or Purdue pled guilty to federal crimes? Did you go and say, I don't want to work for this company?
No, I did not.
Never?
No, never.
Did you ever sit down and say, we're trying to influence federal policy and criminal activity has no role in influencing federal policy with respect to prescription medications?
No, I never went to anybody and said that.
Just didn't ask?
I didn't ask, but I would say that those activities all occurred before I came to the company. They were for activities that occurred before sometime, I think it was the summer of 2001.
Well,
And And I think that my role at the company was one to be proactive and positive and try to impact the crisis that was going on. So it didn't really change my role.
Well, I just want the jury to understand this. So we're going to talk about a 17, 18-year career that's still ongoing.
Pardon me, 17, 18 what?
Your career at Purdue that's still ongoing? For at least 7 years of that career at Purdue, you were directly influenced by Friedman and Udell as your record. At various times in the pay care form, J&J was a member.
That's correct.
Cephalon was a member.
I believe so, yes.
Watson was a member.
Pardon me?
Watson?
I think so. I know Watson doesn't exist anymore. I don't recall when that happened, and I don't recall whether they were a member, but if they were, I'm sure there's a record of it somewhere.
Tupper became a member.
That's correct.
All these companies were members at various times, right?
That's correct.
All these companies made or sold some type of opioid, right?
That's right.
You were all in the pain care forum, partners in that entity, correct?
Well, they participated in pain care forum.
Well, they sat with you in that pain care forum year after year after year, didn't they?
Whenever they started participating, yes.
And Teva, as we know, sells drugs that they get from you pursuant to a distribution agreement after all the patent lawsuits were settled.
I don't really know if they do or not.
Let me ask you this. Did Cephalon ever come to you at any point in time and say, you know, Mr. Rosen, we can't be associated with your company? That ever happened?
No.
Did Johnson & Johnson ever come and say, Mr. Rosen, we just can't be associated with you at your company? Did Teva ever come and say, you know, Mr. Rosen, we just can't be associated with you and your company?
No, they didn't.
Never said that, did they?
No.
Even after the convictions happened, they didn't say it, did they?
No.
When Purdue pled guilty to federal felony, did J&J come to the pain care forum and say, we're not going to participate anymore because we don't want to have anything to do with Purdue? Did they ever say that?
No, not to me.
Did Cephalon ever come and say, you know what, Mr. Rosen, we don't want to participate in the pain care forum because you guys committed a crime, we don't want to have anything to do with you?
Not to me.
Did Teva ever come and say, Mr. Rosen, you know, you guys have been charged with a crime, you pled guilty, and we don't want to have anything to do with you? They never said that, did they?
Not to me.
Not once, did they?
Again, not to me.
They've all been happy to sell opioids and participate in that pain care forum with you for almost 2 decades, right?
Well, pain care form's been in existence for about 14 years.
Yeah. And they were all there side by side with you in that process, weren't they?
They were participants. They worked with us in the pain care forum, and they still do, as far as I know.
Still do, don't they? Right.
As far as I know.
Pain care forum was an amalgamation of over 65 different entities, true?
The Pain Care Forum was an organization that was put together to simply share information and exchange points of view. And at one time, or at any given time, there were, if you said 65, I don't know the exact number, but there were at least 65 organizations that participated over time.
The truth is, the Pain Care Forum was something put together by Purdue to help Purdue preserve its profitability and its reputation in the midst of what started in 2001. That was exactly what the Pain Care Forum was put together to do, right?
No, sir, that's not correct at all.
And the Pain Care Forum collectively, over its existence, the members spent over $740 million lobbying in this country, correct?
I'm not aware of that.
Those entities spent over $140 million lobbying just to the United States Congress.
I'm not familiar with that.
And those entities spent over $75 million in campaign contributions to folks running for federal office.
I don't know that.
This group met over the course of 15 years.
I think we're in our, 2005, we're in our 14th.
Well, let me ask you this. Who's your registered agent for service of process when I want to go sue the Pain Care Forum?
There is no registered agent.
That's right. And where do I go to find the building that you operated in?
There is no building.
And when I want to go get your emails so that I can figure out what really happened, where do I go get the Pain Care Forum emails?
Well, I think there are no Pain Care Forum.
That's right. They're not. And when I want to go to the internet and find out about the Pain Care Forum, what domain do I go to? Can I type in www.paincareforum.com?
There is no website.
Can I Sorry, let me speak over, there's no website?
I said there's no website that I'm aware of.
Now, Purdue's heavily regulated by the federal government and state government, true?
I think all companies are, yes.
All industry drug companies are, correct?
Correct.
DEA,
Correct.
FDA,
Correct.
state government,
Yes.
CDC,
Pardon me?
the CDC, you have to deal with them.
Well, they're not a regulatory body, but yes,
They're an entity you gotta deal with.
certainly.
Did they regulate the painter form?
The pay care form really was just a form. It's kind of hard to explain, but there was no entity. It was a group of organizations that came together once a month for an hour, unless we had a speaker, when we added another hour, and we exchanged information.
Did they tell you about Kathleen Foley and Richard Sackler's idea to create a secret collaboration of the industry and third parties?
Not aware of what you're talking
They
about.
never told you that.
I'm not aware of what you're
Okay,
talking
I'm
about.
gonna get you a mark that didn't want. Judge, I'm sorry, I may have to set this down for you and the other side, I really like litigation. So exhibit 1, sir, is an email produced us by your company, Purdue, from Kathleen Foley to Richard Sackler on April 4th, 2001. Now, this was before you ever showed up at the company, right?
This is before I went for.
Well, it's just a short, but let's just go through it. We'll take you through it. If there's something you need to look at, we'll do it. Let's just open this up.
I'd like to take a moment and read it.
You go ahead. I'd love to see your reaction.
I've already seen this.
I'll talk over it. I know you've never seen it, but I want you to read it. And I want to see what your reaction is to seeing this for the first time.
Okay.
You know that company 17 years, right? Almost 18.
Just started my 17th year, yes.
The drug company never showed you this document, did they?
I've never seen that, no.
You know Kathleen Foley is, don't you?
I've never met Kathleen Foley. I know her by name.
She was an influential thought leader in the area of pain management, including the use of opioids.
I know she was a doctor, and I thought she was at Sloan Kettering in New York, but I know she's I don't know if she's a pain doctor. I don't know exactly what she is.
Tell the jury who Richard Sackler is.
Richard Sackler is also a doctor, but he's the son of one of the founders of Purdue.
He was known as Dr. Richard there in the walls of one Stanford, right?
Yes, a number of the family members were doctors, so it was just an easier way to identify. Instead of, if there were 4 or 5 Dr. Sacklers, most people referred to them as by their first name, Dr. Raymond, Dr. Richard.
So here in this document, April 2001, Mrs. Foley's contacted Richard Sackler, talking about how the company needs to respond to certain media events targeting Purdue and OxyContin for some problems that are happening in the country. You read that? You saw it with your own eyes?
I did read that.
Okay, now I want you to look down here to the, what I'll say is the second paragraph, or the first paragraph, about 5 lines in. It says,
The paragraph starting with I?
yes, sir. If you go down the 5th line, it says,
Oh, okay.
the company should send those facts to them and continue to maintain a rapid response when the statements are made about the drug and the statements are made about the drug company. You see that?
I do.
Then it goes on to the next one. Skip down in a couple sentences. It says, I'm thinking of an alternative strategy of bringing together all of the members of the pharmaceutical industry who have analgesic drugs. Now, let's just stop for a second. Analgesic drugs include opioids, right?
Yes.
So I'm thinking of an alternative strategy of bringing together all the members of the pharmaceutical industry who have analgesic drugs out there and try to come together as a sort of cohesive voice, recognizing that your particular drug has been recently identified in the newspapers as a drug issue. It says it right there, doesn't it? Yes?
You are reading it, yes.
You see it in your own eyes.
I do.
I think there is a tightrope that you need to walk because you are a drug company. And it would be much better if the advocacy came from outside the drug company, and even better without much in the way of support from you. I mean, it says it right there, doesn't it?
That's what it says.
They don't like the way I asked that question, do they?
That
You see it with your own eyes. Kathleen Foley is telling Dr. Richard, we need to get a group together to deal with these issues that industry's a part of, but we want it to look like it's coming outside of industry. That's exactly what it says. right?
I can't tell you what she had in her mind when she wrote this.
Well, you can read it black and white. I mean, we can dance around it, but it says, I think there is a tightrope you need to walk. It says that, right?
It does.
And you are a drug company. It says that, right?
It does.
And it would be much better if Advocacy came from outside the drug company, right?
That's what she said.
Okay. Then it goes down and says, so along those lines, the kind of things that I'm thinking of is that maybe we should call a meeting, bring together representatives from all of the companies, ideally high-level representatives like presidents or major leaders, and strategize about the way to play the media issues. You see that?
I did.
Now let's look at that last part. Strategize about the way to play the media issues. You see that?
Yes.
That's something Purdue did a lot of, right? Is play the media, right?
I'm not aware of.
Well, in fact, after the abuse problem started to grow nationally, the Sacklers came down and they told y'all that when we go to the media, who we're going to abuse is we're going to abuse the victims. We're going to go after the abusers. We're going to hit them in the media with everything we have. That was your corporate strategy, wasn't it? You know that's true.
I'm not aware of it.
You've seen it.
Sir, I have not.
You were part of it.
Again, if you have something specific, I'd be glad to.
Well, you worked with Dozen Hall.
I know who Dozen Hall is. That's a public relations firm, which I haven't been involved in.
You worked with Penny and Associates?
I have worked with Penny and Associates.
And you know they and others were hired by Purdue to, and I'm quoting this, hammer the abusers, hammer the victims, and get the press off of your back. You know that's what happened.
I'm not aware of that. I might want to add that I actually know John Penny, who's someone who has worked in the addiction field. I've known John before I arrived at Purdue because I worked on Nicorette as a drug. I worked for a company that made Nicorette. That's really how I know John Penny. But I didn't work in this public affairs.
Well, let's just step back a little bit. Right here, we're seeing a strategy to join together with high-level representatives from all the industry companies that make opioid analgesics to strategize about how to play the media. That's being proposed right here, correct?
Yeah, that's what her email says.
And it goes on to say, if you look down the next one, she says, this may sound relatively self-serving, but it might be a good idea if we could get the pharmaceutical companies together, along with Purdue, willing to take the lead and agree a funding strategy to the American Association of Medical Colleges to facilitate the education of medical students in pain management. You see that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's just stop right there. Nobody ever showed you that document until right now, right?
That's correct.
So here's what I marked as Exhibit 5. I'd keep those open like that. It might be helpful. So these are short. We'll keep them short and still them together. And if something comes up you need to take more time on, you just let me know. So Exhibit 5 on the front is an email from you dated July 8, 2004. You see that?
I'm sorry, I was reading it. What you're asking?
Start at the first page, make sure you understand what Exhibit 5 is. It's an email from you, Burt Rosen, correct?
That's correct.
And then it's dated July 8, 2004 at 8:52 p.m.
That's correct.
It is sent to various people at Purdue, including Howard Udell.
That's correct.
And Tim Brandon.
Yes.
And Alan Must.
Yes.
Okay, and it says, FYI, we just had the second luncheon of this group. Thought you might like to see who they are. You see that?
I do.
And it's got a document that says Pain Care Group. See that? That's on that document.
Pain Care Management and Policy Review Group.
Okay. Now, the first page of this document has Solana Shaw. She was your administrative person there at Purdue.
She was, yes.
Okay. So let's turn to what this group looks like. July 2004, you had put together something. It was the second meeting. And here it's called the Pain Care Management and Policy Review Group. See that?
I did.
All right, let's look at who this is. The first person on there worked for Cephalon, correct?
That's correct.
And then we see another industry person, Baxter.
Correct.
We see Ligand Pharmaceuticals.
I do.
We go down, we see a law firm,
Yes.
Bristol Myers.
Yes.
And then we see a couple different groups, Last Acts and National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization. Those are advocacy groups, right?
You know, I honestly don't remember what Last Acts is. National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization is a group that represents hospice and palliative care organizations.
Okay, and then we see ALSA, which is listed as a J&J subsidiary, correct?
That's correct.
And just to make it clear to the jury that this is in fact J&J, if you look over to the far right, that person's email address is at jnj.com, right?
That's correct.
Okay, now, then we see you and Purdue Pharma.
Yes?
Then we skip down, we see Will Rowe, the American Pain Foundation. See that?
Yes.
Now, Will Rowe was the head of the American Pain Foundation. True?
That's right.
Then we see Robert Sainer, and it lists a law firm.
Yeah.
Now, you know, Bob Sainer actually was a representative of many different groups in this entity, including the American Pain Society.
Bob Sainer, I think, ran a small coalition of as I recall it, of organizations that were, I think, physicians that represented different aspects of pain.
Okay, so this is an early meeting, 2004, of industry and advocates under Pain Care Management Policy Review Group. True?
Right. The other two that were Medtronic's, a medical device company, and American Pharmacists.
So we got Cephalon, J&J, and Purdue in the room together, right?
That's correct.
The American Pain Foundation.
That's correct.
All right, let's turn to the next exhibit I have. Mark this as Exhibit 6. Thank you, sir. Let's just start on the front page. We'll go through this maybe section by section. We're just going to kind of focus on the front 2 pages. So Exhibit 6, you'll see while you're looking at it. Exhibit 6 is an email dated November 29, 2004 from you, Bert Rosen, to Robin Hogan, Alan Lust, and others at Purdue Pharma. You see that at the top?
I do.
Okay. And you're responding to an email that has an attachment that says 2005 External Affairs Objectives. You see that?
I do.
Now, you were on something called the External Affair Group, or CEAC at that time?
I was on the CEAC, which was an external committee, but I don't really recall when that was created and if it existed at this particular date.
Well, let's look to the next page.
Okay.
Top of this, it says 2005.
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to finish the first page.
You got it.
Okay. You're on page 2?
Yes, sir. 2005 Objectives for External Affairs. You see that?
Yes, I do.
We're just going to focus on numbers 1 and 2. But number 1, the bold headline is, make the undertreatment of pain a public health issue. You see that?
I do.
And we go down different things here about how to do that. Work with the Centers for Disease Control to adopt pain as a public health issue. See that? And B is expand the visibility of September as Pain Awareness Month. See that?
Expand the visibility of September as Pain Awareness Month.
D, we'll skip down, is deploy Michael Friedman as an ambassador for the undertreatment of pain. Am I reading that right?
That's what it says.
And we skip down to G, is assist pain groups in efforts to promote pain management in Washington, federal government affairs. See that?
I do, but I'm trying to read the document.
Go ahead. We're going to concentrate on this.
Assist pain groups to promote pain management in Washington.
You bet. So Mr. Rosen, right here, the number 1 listed objective in 2005 for external affairs was make the undertreatment of pain a public health issue, correct? This document, it says it right there. Just read for the jury what the first one says.
Make the undertreatment of pain a public health issue.
Okay. Now I'm going to hand you Exhibit 7. This is from Cephalon that they produced. Turn to the first page if you like. Let's go there. The cover of Exhibit 7 says OVF Commercial Strategy Meeting. If you'll turn to the next page, see at the top it says BTP medications.
I don't know what BTP stands for.
Sure. I'm just gonna let you look at one thing. There's a big cartoon blowout in the middle of that page. Read for the jury what it is.
Sales 101, create need, sell to need.
Sales 101, create need, sell to need. That's what it says, right?
That's what the document says.
Front page of Exhibit 7 shows that was produced by Teva.
Yes, it does.
Okay. J&J and Teva weren't alone in that. Exhibit 8. Exhibit 8 is Johnson & Johnson doctor. Okay, we have that one. I'm sorry. Gina moves like it going a little fast. That's yours. That's yours. I'm sorry, Judge, I apologize. I know you haven't seen this. I know you don't work for Ortho and Deal and J&J. I'm just going to show you something, and we'll talk about how it works with pain care. You see the first page of this Exhibit 8 is an April 10, 2008 email. You see that? I do. And it has the name Ron Coots on it. It's from Lynn Leonard. You see that? I do. Okay. Now, let's turn to the next page. Spares an exhibit from another piece of testimony in his case, but you see where it says Pensacola initiatives? Yes, I do. Okay, let's turn to the next part. Stepping stones to success. You see that? I do. Read for the jury what the first list is, and the first one listed by Ortho and Deal for stepping stones to success.
Excuse me. It's to build a medical need.
Okay, thank you. Let's turn to the next page. Public relations plan. Public relations strategic approach. Redirect dialogue from drug control to controlling pain. See that? I do. And to do it, it says, 1, emphasize the need. Advocacy development. See that right there?
Yes, I do.
That's the first thing listed in this public relations plan document is to emphasize the need. You see that?
I do.
And again, I know you're not part of this company, but if you were on the paper form, if you look to the bottom left, there's a deal that says Advocacy Coalition. Let's talk pain. You see that? I do. Okay, we're done with that. That's what I meant by creating the need and filling the need. So, now, this is all building up to something called pain care form. So, we just talked about whether you were a profit or not for-profit company. Let's look at Exhibit 9. So that, I don't mean to throw it, I gotta try to reach across the table. From time to time, you had to send your boss, Howard Udell, kind of personal assessments about your work and goals of the company, right? Correct. Now, if we look at the first page of Exhibit 9, it's a June 27, 2005 email that you sent to Howard Udell and others, correct?
That's correct.
And it's Mr. Must is on there again, right?
That's correct.
I've had a chance to get his testimony. We'll be seeing him again soon. He was the person who was in charge of state operations. He was kind of your state level counterpart, true?
That's true.
Okay. It says, for discussion and to begin the process of aligning Fed, state, and PA. You see that? I do. You know what PA means?
I assume public affairs.
Okay. Now let's turn to the next page. 2005 objections. Responsible objectives. It says Bert Rose, a responsible person. You see that? And Howard Udell is the supervisor.
Yes.
That's the same Howard Udell that pled guilty to a federal crime.
That is the same Howard Udell we've been talking about this morning.
Now, it says, situation statement, we have moved Purdue to a more positive position in Congress, correct?
No, sir, it says in Washington.
I'm sorry, I'll skip ahead. Let's do that again. We have moved Purdue to a more positive position in Washington, correct?
Yes.
We've gained some friends in Congress who understand the scope of prescription drug diversion and abuse. See that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. We will continue to favor solutions through a positive legislative agenda. That said, we remain at risk with our product subject to criticism and attack from 2 subcommittee chairmen. You see that? I do. Now it goes on. Let's just look down one sentence. With Purdue's recent patent loss, we need to concentrate our efforts on issues that can help us transition into a smaller, more cost-effective company. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, do you mind if I finish the first paragraph first?
No, I don't mind.
Okay, thank you.
All right. It says, with Purdue's recent patent loss, we need to concentrate our efforts on issues that can help us transition into a smaller, more cost-effective company, right?
That's correct.
And then the next sentence begins with the word PHRMA. You see that word?
I do.
Now, for the jury, they'll understand that sometimes the industry is called pharma, PHARMA.
Yes.
That's not what this is.
That's an acronym for the Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers Association.
And you guys were a member of pharma.
We are a member of Pharma.
So was J&J and Teva.
I'm not sure if Teva was a member of Pharma in 2005 or not.
They are now.
I believe they are now.
And you guys paid a lot of money to be members of pharma.
We did pay dues to Pharma.
Millions.
I don't know the number.
Well, it was as much as $3 million. And one of the things you had to do in the last couple of years was try to get the dues cut. You tried to get the dues cut because it was too big expense for you.
On a couple of occasions, I have asked Pharma to reduce the dues, yes.
Pharma, here, it says pharma needs to become a source for our product development and licensing efforts, right?
Right.
Federal government affairs, that's you, right?
Yes.
Needs to align goals towards driving, now read for the jury, driving what?
Towards driving sales and assisting in the transition to the new Purdue.
Now let's just walk that back again. Pharma is one of the biggest industry lobbying groups there is, right?
Pharma is a trade association that represents pharmaceuticals.
You don't pay dues to be in pharma.
Yes, we have.
Pharma spends tons of money donating to federal campaigns and lobbying across this country, right?
I don't know the number.
Oh, you know what else is interesting? I forgot about this. Damn it, just remember. I proposed a guy by the name of Ponder, who was J&J's registered lobbyist that worked for J&J in the state of Oklahoma. Did you know that?
I don't know that person.
You know, when we filed this lawsuit, he stopped coming to the state. You know who got doing work with
No, I don't.
pharma? Do you know that?
I don't know that. I don't know that.
You know who y'all got to sit on one of our medical boards here in the state?
Who?
Purdue.
No, I don't.
Yeah. Y'all got pharma to actually sit on one of the boards here and have a seat on one of the boards that looks at drug utilization. Do you know that?
No, I didn't.
That's interesting, isn't it? But an industry-supported lobby group will actually sit on a board here in the state that oversees drugs in our state. That's pretty odd, isn't it?
I don't know what you're referring to. I don't know.
Let's talk about what you do know, because I bet the jury's going to really be interested in this. Right here, this big industry lobby group that is working with other industry, including J&J, it says, needs to become a source of our product development and licensing efforts. I mean, it says it in black and white, doesn't it? And you wrote it.
I did, yes.
And it says that federal government affairs needs to align its goals towards driving sales. Says that too, doesn't it?
It does.
We go down to goals, it says ensure that Purdue products are available to patients without unnecessary restrictions, and that appropriate effective pain care and pain medicines are accessible to patients and healthcare professionals. It says that too.
It does.
And then it says assist Purdue in preserving revenue and finding new products.
Correct.
All right, let's go to the next page. Or we talked, 2 pages, we talked about that pain care group. Remember that? That idea that Kathleen Foley had in 2001 you didn't know about.
That's correct.
Then we had the pain group we looked at in 2003 and 4 that you did know about. Now let's look here at this last bullet.
Again, until I saw that document, I didn't remember that had a name with Pain Care Group, and I don't know who produced that actual document. Do you?
No.
Was that produced by Purdue, or was that just attached to the email?
Look at it. I did look at it.
But in any event, I don't recall a name being given to it.
I think it's one of your emails. I personally looked at about 6,000 emails or
Well, it is an email, and it has an attachment. I'm asking you who produced it.
Case number. What does it say?
PPL CO 3100199947.
That's your employer. All right, let's look at this one. So let's just get the jury so they understand what just happened right there. You didn't know when you were hired, but Kathleen Foley told Sackler she wanted to get an industry group to use advocates to help your company. We saw that earlier. You didn't know about it, but that was one of the first exhibits we looked at, right?
That was, yes.
Now we carry forward to
Well,
05.
I'm sorry. As I read that document, it was to try to pull together pharmaceutical companies. Was it not?
And walk the tightrope of having advocacy groups work for them. We've already talked about that, and I'll look right here at this third bullet point.
Where are you?
The last page, that document you're looking at, exhibit 9, or whatever it is. The third one says, followed on earlier years' efforts in forming pain group to formalizing into the Pain Care Forum that now has about 30 organizations aligned behind issues related to access to pain care. You see that?
I'm sorry, I don't. You said on the last page?
Let me see your copy, sir.
I see it now. Okay. The third bullet. Okay, let me just read the document.
You bet.
Okay, thank you. Your question?
I want you to read for the jury the third bullet point that you reported to your boss, Howard Udall.
Following on earlier years' efforts in forming pain group to formalize into the Pain Care Forum that now has about 30 organizations aligned behind issues relating to access to pain.
Mr. President, I just handed you Exhibit 11, and this is a Purdue Performance Partnership Appraisal Form dated October 25, 2005. See that?
I do.
And this document lists your goals accomplished. See that?
Yes, I do.
At the very top it says prepared for Bert Rosen, and it says check if colleagues' self-appraisal was provided. And there's an X in that box, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So this lists different goals that you had. I want to focus, we're going to start talking a little bit about the Pain Care Forum. On number 2, here in bold, it says support efforts of the pain community in their legislative initiatives and continuing to expand the pain care group that we established with pain advocates and companies that make pain medicine. That's all in all caps, correct?
Yes, that is.
And as we discussed a minute ago, there was a document we looked at from the 2003 timeframe that you were involved in a pain care group. Remember that?
I do.
And here it says, referring to that group that we established, right?
For the Pain Care Forum?
Well, this is going back to the pain care group. It says expand the pain care group that we established, right? That was one of your goals.
I'm sorry, it says establish the Pain Care Forum.
Where is your, the all bold, the all caps on number 2?
Yes.
It says support efforts of the pain community in their legislative initiatives and continuing to expand the pain care group that we established.
Yes, I do see that.
Okay. Now, if you go down to the next sentence, it's not in all caps. It says successfully established the Pain Care Forum. Right?
Yes.
Now, this is referring to you. Performance appraisal. Right?
Yes.
And it's referring to you as successfully established the Pain Care Forum. Correct?
Correct.
You established it.
Along with a number of people, yes.
Purdue established it.
As I said, along with another, a group of other people, yes.
Now it says organized an executive committee and recruited 31 organizations as active participants. See that?
Yes, I do.
Somebody once told me that words matter, so I want to break down these words a little bit and go through it. Organized an executive committee. That's a past tense of an active verb. Organized an executive committee, right?
That's what it says, yes.
Recruited 31 organizations. It's a verb, recruited.
Correct.
And then it says, it describes the type of participants, and the word you chose is what?
I'm not sure where you are.
Active. How did you define participants?
Organizations as active participants.
So the word there is active, right?
Yes.
It does not say passive.
No, it does not.
And then it says these organizations are from companies, pain care advocates, palliative care advocates, physician groups, nursing groups, and disease groups, right?
Yes,
The forum meets monthly with quarterly luncheons with guest speakers, right?
that's correct.
Then the forum discusses issues surrounding pain and access to care. Let's just stop there and say, the forum discusses issues surrounding pain and access to pain care. That's what that sentence says, right?
It is.
But then the sentence says a little bit more. What does it say the forum does after those discussions?
It says then takes collective actions on policy issues of interest.
So what kind of actions?
Collective actions on policy issues of interest.
Collective,
Correct.
not individual, collective.
That's right.
Okay. J&J was a member of the pain care forum with you.
They were. Again, I can't remember who came when.
Seth Long at some point was a member with you.
Yes, sir.
Teva came in later, they were a member.
Correct.
Okay. When referring to these folks, your words, as one of the creators,
Yes.
collective actions. Pain care forum or proposal, Exhibit 12 is what you guys put out to talk about how the pain care forum is going to work. It's a document you were involved in creating.
Yes, that's correct. This was, I guess, in 2005.
Yep.
Okay.
It's the genesis. So we go to the second paragraph here under the need, and it says, all who work in this field recognize the overwhelming numbers of organizations and players, and though encouraged by the volume, are challenged to collect and coordinate knowledge, opinions, perspectives, and actions that serve the common purposes of the field, right?
That's correct.
Our efforts tend to be independent and isolated without the advantage of coordination. It says it right there, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Thus losing the advantage of combined force, right?
Correct.
And the word before force is what?
Combined.
We often operate with different sets of information, the combination of which would provide significant advantage of intelligence needed for effective planning and action.
Correct.
Did you write this?
I don't know who wrote this. I think there was a draft put out, or 6 or so of us that started to organize the pain care forum, and I don't believe I wrote this, but this was passed around and discussed.
Okay. Now, if we go back to this document, if you look under the goals of the pain care forum, we go to number 2. It says, provide a forum to coordinate and focus commitments to action regarding public policy issues that affect the treatment of pain. You see that?
I do.
And it says coordinate and focus commitments to action, right?
Correct.
And that in fact occurred.
Well, what it says is, it says, and again, it says provide a forum to coordinate.
Sorry, I interrupted you. Forum
To coordinate, and in fact, that's what we did, is that number 1 was to provide a forum for the exchange of information and ideas to further the general education of its members. So that's what I told you before. And it also provided a forum to coordinate, but it didn't say that the pain care forum itself would take a position, but rather groups that participated were certainly free to do so if they chose, or not if they chose.
I heard you.
Well,
I also read what you wrote here and elsewhere, so we're going to walk through.
let's walk through it, but that was and is and always has been its intent and its practice.
Well, if I look at number 2, it doesn't say a forum to talk about. It says a forum to coordinate, right? That's your words. Y'all wrote it.
It does.
It says and focus commitments to action, right?
Right.
Okay. You did it. You did that.
Groups did that participated in the pain care forum. That's what I've said from the beginning.
Coordinated.
Groups who decided to work on a particular issue would go off and work on it together if they so chose.
Coordinated by the pain care forum.
Not by the pain care forum itself.
Let's keep going. true. It says, in an effort to establish a pain care forum, Will Rowe, Executive Director of the American Pain Foundation, John Kesserling, VP Policy and Strategy at the National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization, Terry Gio, VP of Government Relations, EHS at Ligand, and Bert Rosen, VP Federal Government Affairs at Purdue Pharma, will serve as the initial executive community, right?
Correct.
Now, the American Pain Foundation was J&J's go-to partner. You know that.
You told me earlier, yes.
I'm going to show you a document. Now, there's something very interesting in history I know about the American Pain Foundation. You guys paid them a lot of money. Purdue did, millions of dollars.
To whom?
To the American Pain Foundation. Millions of dollars.
Again, may I ask a question to my lawyer?
Answer the question to the best of your ability.
Okay. Well, the only way I know how to answer it is truthfully, and that is that I was not aware of any payments, specific payments to the American Pain Foundation until previous, and this is deposition where those numbers were put in front of me.
I read that deposition a little differently than this one, didn't it?
I don't know what you mean. It's about 7 hours long, and
A little different
one of
question.
the plaintiff's firms,
It's not our case.
okay.
So,
But I'm simply trying to answer your question. I'm aware of payments to the American Pain Foundation because in a previous deposition, those numbers were put in front of me.
here's what happened. You guys gave money to a lot of these organizations, including the American Pain Foundation. You understand that?
I did.
You understand that the American Pain Foundation, and Will Rowe specifically, was very active in the pain care forum.
Correct.
You also understand that in 2011, investigative journalists started trying to investigate the payments of pharmacy industry companies, including yours, to groups that were on the pain care forum. You're aware of that?
I am aware of what you're referring to. I don't recall that it was an investigative journalist. I think one of the Senate committees asked for that information.
That's one step next.
Okay.
After the investigative journalists came a call and said the United States Senate, correct?
Yes, one of the committees of the Senate asked for that
They
information.
didn't ask, they sent a subpoena.
Whatever it was provided.
They compelled.
If that's the case, I was not involved in that, but yes.
And Purdue, J&J, and others have to admit that they had paid money to the American Pain Foundation.
That's my understanding.
And the American Pain Foundation made a choice not to respond to that subpoena because they did something else. What did they do?
What are you referring to?
Well, you know, as moderator of the pain care forum, that one day the American Pain Foundation was there, and then one day it was not.
So then was that in 2011?
12.
12. Okay.
So when the Senate came a calling to open the books of the American Pain Foundation, they cut and ran.
Well, I can't speak for the American Pain Foundation.
1 month you were in the pain care forum with the American Pain Foundation, right?
That's correct.
And then the next month, they weren't there anymore.
They disbanded, they went out of business, yeah.
They disappeared. One of your members, one of your executive committee members, one of your founding fathers just vanished.
That's what I said, they disbanded.
Because the Senate came asking where their money came from.
Well, I don't know if that's the reason they disbanded.
Here's the founding document of the Pain Care Forum where it says your executive committee consists of you and the executive director of the American Pain Foundation, right? Correct. Now turn and tell us, jury, that when the American Pain Foundation ceased to do business, is it your testimony that you didn't ask them why?
It's my testimony that 7 years after we organized the Pain Care Forum, that the American Pain Foundation did in fact go out of existence.
Did you ask them why?
Well, I didn't speak to them. I don't know the reasons why.
The entity had an executive committee, the Pain Care Forum.
That is correct.
And it had a voting mechanism.
Correct.
And that voting mechanism required a 2/3 vote of members who you put there and recruited personally to decide who got to participate. All that's true.
That is true. In the initial formation of the Pain Care Forum, these 5 or 6 of us went out and got a kind of a core group together, and over time, it grew to, I think you had said 65 organizations.
Is it 14?
I'm sorry.
You see exhibit 14, you front, this is 12. Just hand it to the lawyer. Sorry, I'm sorry. No, that's my fault, there's a lot wrong. So this document is reviewed dated May 13, 2005. You see that? Yes, I do. At the bottom of the front page, you've got somebody talking about wanting to get publicity. I'm sorry, front page, yes, sir. You've got somebody from the Cato Institute wanting to get publicity for a paper he wrote called Treating Doctors as Drug Dealers, the DEA's War on Prescription Painkillers. You see that? Yes. And he went to a guy named David Jorgensen. David Jorgensen was at the Pain and Policy Studies here in Wisconsin. You know him?
I'm sorry, the email is from Ron Libby.
Mm-hmm.
You said it was from David Jorgensen?
The bottom email says, it's to you from Ron Libby.
Yeah.
I'm following up on David Jorgensen.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I thought you said it was from David Jorgensen.
Now, let's go to the second page of Exhibit 14. There's a pain care form directory.
Excuse me. Yes, I see that.
First member listed, Johnson & Johnson.
Correct.
Second member listed, Cephalon.
Correct.
Third member listed, Purdue Pharma.
Yes.
You go through here, there's quite a few members. You see them? We don't have to go through them all one by one. I want you to look at the last page on, or the next to last page. While you're looking, I'm going to ask you a very simple question. You can use that to help you answer. That 2005 member list shows that Johnson & Johnson, Cephalon, Purdue, and the American Pain Foundation were all members at that time, correct?
I'm sorry, can you repeat yourself?
When you look at that document, it confirms that at the same time in 2005, Purdue, Johnson & Johnson, Cephalon, and the American Pain Foundation were all members of the Pain Care Forum.
Yes, they were.
All right, you see exhibit 17, sir?
Yes, I'm still reading it.
You bet.
Okay, thank you.
So on the front page of page 17, there's a series of emails, right?
Yes, sir.
And the gist of this is you're talking about a legislative subgroup working in Congress on different things that are happening in Congress, right?
That's correct. This is a I think you're referring to a subgroup at the pain, group that was developed at the Pain Care Forum.
Yes. And so if you look at the bottom of page 17, it's also talking about hosting a Congressman Lopes Act to discuss the Military Pain Care Act.
That's correct.
So when you report back up the chain, you report to Howard Udell, Les Gasdia, and Alan Musk, right?
Yes, that's correct. This was in 2008, yes.
At some point, Russ Gasby was head of, or at least on top of sales, among other things at Purdue, correct?
Yes, so Russ Gassia no longer works at Purdue. I've forgotten when he left, but he, at one point, was the head of sales at Purdue, and I don't remember in 2008 what position he held.
And here it says, you reported to these three folks on March 14, 2008. Just wanted to share with you a sense of the effort that is taking place at the Pain Care Forum on one of the three bills we are proactively promoting. Says that, right?
Yes, sir.
It refers to the Pain Care Forum as an entity taking place at the Pain Care Forum. See that?
I do.
It refers to three bills, and it says in your own words, we are actively promoting, right?
Yes.
Referring back to the Pain Care Forum. Right?
Well, again, this was written 10 years ago, and I don't remember what it was referring back to. It certainly could have been that we Purdue were promoted.
Okay, well, even better. But just looking at it black and white, refers to the Pain Care Forum and bills that we are proactively promoting. Says it black and white, correct? Correct. And then Mr. Udell said, Bert, that's just great. See that?
Yes.
What does he say next?
He says that the PCF has become a force, quote unquote, to be courted by members of Congress.
Okay. Now, Mr. Udell doesn't say individual members and subgroups of PCF have become a force, does it?
No, he doesn't.
He says what has become a force?
The PCF, and Kurt Warren.
The PCF, right?
Yes,
Now, that's your boss, Howard Udell.
yes,
This is in March of 2008.
correct.
This is 9 months or so after he pled guilty to a federal crime.
If it is, I don't remember the date.
I'll hand you exhibit 18. You'll pass it
Oh,
on.
I'm sorry. They're multiple, I apologize. Yes, that would be correct.
And as this document, which is dated November 16, 2006, it says there's new composition of the executive committee. See that?
I do, yes.
Now, Will Rowe, the American Pain Foundation, is still there, correct?
That's correct.
Bert Rose and Purdue Pharma, you're still there.
Yes,
And now we have Jeff Myers Cephalon.
yes.
Okay? Thank you. That's all I have for that. I'll walk you through this. Let me show you something on the second page. You see on the front page, you've got an email. You see that?
I do.
And it's from a Robin Cohn, and you see Jan beside her name.
I do.
She was an employee of Johnson & Johnson Janssen. So if you look down on that email, you'll see her name, Robin Cohn, National Advocacy Director, Pain IM Strategic Customer Group. You see that?
Yes, I do.
And it says Johnson & Johnson Healthcare System. See that?
I do.
Okay, now let's turn to the next page. I understand you did not offer this document and you're not a J&J employee. But we're going to talk just a minute about how some of these groups work with paid care for members. While you read that, if you'll look, we're going to talk for a moment about the middle part of that under the banner Advocacy Partners with Policy Committee Sections. Just so you know, when we look through this, I'm just going to ask you about some of the names here and their role in paid care reform. Under that banner, Advocacy Partners with Policy Committee Sections, it says primary external partners. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And the first one listed, it says American Pain Foundation. Start over. The first one listed says American Pain Foundation State Action Network. Go to partner. You see that?
Yes,
In fact, go to partners in quotes.
yes, it is.
It's there black and white on that J&J document.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Now, it did list other external partners, and you see the American Pain Society, correct?
I do.
I was a pain care reform member.
I'd have to compare,
Well,
but
that, here, let's look at it. I was one of Bob Senior's group.
Which is a little bit of a
I think there's another one that's right here.
That's your list.
Yes, I mean, I apologize, but the list changed over time.
Sure.
And,
As early as 2005, American Pain Society was a member.
yes,
And the American Academy of Pain Management was a member.
yes.
And what about the American Academy of Hospice and Palliative Care Medicine? Are they listed at that time?
I don't see them.
Okay, what about pain management?
American Academy of Pain Management?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's flip the page to the document 19. Again, I understand this is a J&J document, but they were members of pain care reform with me. The next page, you sort of says key advocacy. The next page of Exhibit 19, it says key advocacy themes.
I do.
And it says marketplace, highly unsatisfied. See that?
I do.
And we have right there, significant unmet needs in the moderate to severe chronic pain market. Right there. Says it, doesn't it?
That's what it says.
says advocacy on the local market level gaining momentum among partner organizations. Right?
That's what he says.
Then we go market access barriers. Appropriate use and access to opioid therapies, listed right there, isn't it?
Yes, appropriate use and access to opioid therapy.
And then we see it under unbranded programs across key partner segments that says, what are advocacy competitors doing to increase advocacy partnerships? You see that?
I do.
Okay. So, let's go to the next page.
Ready? Page?
Yes, sir. There are new initiatives. You see a national update that says the Institute of Medicine releases a report. You see that?
In the middle of the page?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I do.
You're very familiar with that report, are you not?
I am familiar with the report. I mean, well, let me put it this way. The report came out was it 2011? Yeah, the report was released in 2011. I certainly reviewed it 7 or 8 years ago. I could not, with any specificity, tell you what's in it today. I mean, well, I want to be honest, that's all.
You bet. So let's just do it
I
later.
think it's a book. It's a very thick document.
Let's make it simple.
Okay.
The Pain Care Forum helped lobby Congress through its membership to have something called the National Pain Policy Act created. True?
There were organizations at the Pain Care Forum who supported the National Pain Policy Act.
And what happened was, when Obamacare got passed, the Pain Care Forum worked very actively to make sure that there was a provision of Obamacare that required the IOM to gather and write the IOM report.
It's almost correct. As I said, some of the organizations at the Pain Care Forum who supported the National Pain Policy Act did, in fact, advocate including that as an amendment to what's called the Affordable Care Act.
And it was passed.
And it passed and became law, yes, sir.
And members of the Pain Care Forum also worked together to get the Veterans Bill passed that required the use of pain as a fit vital sign and assessment of veterans.
I don't recall that it required that. My recollection is that both bills were in essence, well, let me start with the first bill. The National Pain Policy Act, as I recall, was an amendment that called on the Institute of Medicine to go out and form an expert committee or panel to study the issues surrounding pain and to write a report. So my recollection is that the National Pain Policy Act did not specify anything more than the IOM would investigate and write a report. I don't think it specified the conclusions or the content of that report.
It required a committee to be formed to write the report.
As I said, I think it required an expert committee to be formed to investigate the issues and ultimately to issue a report.
And when that happened, there was a member of the Pain Care Forum that changed names, but it was at one point called the Center for Practical Bioethics, run by Maya Christopher. You're familiar with that group?
I know who Myra is, yes.
And she worked with other members of the Pain Care Forum to make sure that the advisory committee on the IOM had industry-funded people on it when that report was written.
I'm not aware of what she did or didn't do.
And in fact, the majority of the IOM advisory committee have received funding from the pharmaceutical industry and funding.
Again, I'm not aware.
And then, while that report was being written, Maya Christopher went to the Pain Care Forum and mobilized members to create a new member of the Pain Care Forum called PAINS. Remember that?
Not specifically.
And PAINS was created, a new member of members in 2011, for a dual purpose. One of those purposes was to make sure that the committee report came out the way those folks wanted. And the second reason was to be ready to mobilize Pain Care Forum members to take that report and get proactive legislation at the federal and state level.
To do what?
To do what?
You said to take the report and then to go to the state and do what?
Well, it's a great question. To go to the state and federal governments with the idea that there were now 100+ million people who were in pain, who needed opioid analgesics and other medicines to treat those pain, to treat that pain. That's what pain was created for. You know that.
I don't know that.
And then, hey, sorry, go ahead.
I don't know that.
And then, in fact, we'll look at the documents. Pains actually had another stated purpose. And that purpose was, and I'm quoting, to exert influence or put pressure on legislators. You knew that?
I don't know. I haven't read their, whatever it is, their charter or their purpose.
And the reason this was done is because by the time we got to 2010 or 11, you knew, industry knew that we had reached an epidemic in this country. In fact, in 2011, the CDC came out and said we have a prescription drug abuse epidemic in this country led by opioids, right?
Again, I don't recall.
And industry, sorry.
I don't recall the specific proclamation that you're referring to.
Industry and all your paid care forum members knew that when that was going down, that all of you guys were going to face increased regulatory scrutiny and restrictions, right?
No, I don't think that was, I mean, I'm not aware of what you're talking about. I don't think that was ever the intent of the National Pain Policy Act.
So let's go back to this pain care forum and the IRM report. Let's look at the last page of the document that you have in front of you. We'll go back to items used.
The last page, which is...
The last page of print, it's page 4.
Yes, sir.
All right, I'm there. I was going to save some time. I'll read this to you. It says partner commentary. See that?
I do.
The Island Committee offers a blueprint for action in transforming prevention, care, education, and research with the goal of providing relief for people in pain. Given the burden of pain in human lives, dollars and social consequences, relieving pain should be a national priority. See that?
Yes, I do.
This is J&J reporting about it. It says the committee recognizes that there are many barriers to pain care, including regulatory, legal, institutional, financial, and geographical. All of them factors that not only limit access to effective pain care, but contribute to disparities among select groups. See that?
I do.
And it also says the committee calls for government agencies, healthcare providers, and public and private funders of healthcare to adopt a comprehensive strategic approach to reduce or eliminate the barriers to pain care. You see that?
Yes, I do.
Now, in black, bold letters, J&J says the following. Note, Pain Care Task Force is being formed to develop a communication and outreach plan for dissemination of key messaging across national and local markets. The activities can serve as an advocacy tool for our partner organization. It says it right there in black and white. Right?
Yes.
Okay, let's look at your 2009 individual objectives. Excuse me, exhibit 20. Thank you.
Yeah.
So this is a document, and I know you won't have time to read it, so why don't we do this? We just kind of go page by page and we can look at the columns as we go so you can answer. Just at the beginning here, this is objectives for you, Burt Rosen.
Correct.
Federal Government Affairs 2009, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And the first department objective is to have Purdue viewed as a leader in Washington on public policy issues by positioning Purdue in leadership roles within the pharmaceutical industry, with patient organizations, providers, and policymakers, right?
That's correct.
We talk a lot about different things that you did. We're here to talk primarily about pain care for today, so let's turn to the next page. In the middle column, 1B, you tell the jury what you wrote?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to familiarize myself with this document. It's 8 or 9 years old, and
I don't really recall all of it. I'm sorry, now are you on page 2?
Yes. Please read 1B.
Okay. Led the pain care forum and leveraged this coalition consistent with the best interests of Purdue and the patients and healthcare professionals that we serve, and work with Pain Care Forum in an effort to create a more cooperative environment at the FDA and DEA.
A lot there. Let's go back through it. Led the pain care forum, right?
Yes.
And leverage this coalition. Those are 3 words. Your words. Leverage. Is that your word?
It is. I'm sorry, I'm reading the rest of it, but go ahead.
Leverage this coalition.
Yes.
Consistent with the best interest of Purdue. Right?
Correct.
And the patients and healthcare professionals that we serve.
Correct.
Right?
Yes, sir.
So it doesn't say lead individual members of the pain care forum or subgroups, does it?
It does not.
It says lead the pain care forum, right?
It does.
And it says right here, in your goals and objectives, that you want to leverage this coalition consistent with first thing, the best interest of Purdue, right?
Correct. Yes.
And over on the right, it says you acted as a moderator for PHCF,
Right.
conducted monthly meetings.
Correct.
You list some of the guests you had on Throckmorton. He was at the FDA, right?
Correct.
Senator Hatch was very important to you because he dealt with some patent rules that you were concerned about.
Senator Hatch's staff came. I don't recall the subject matter, but Senator Hatch's staff came, yes.
Now let's look at Exhibit 21.
Did I give you a copy? Yes, I have a copy. Thank you.
This is a media committee report from July 16, 2009. You see that?
I do.
And it lists the participants. We see at the top 4 advocates. One of them is the American Pain Foundation, J&J's go-to partner. You see that?
I'm sorry, American Academy of...
No, number 4 is American Pain Foundation.
Yes, yes.
And you looked at Dr. Erler, they were referred to as, by Janssen, as his go-to partner. You saw that document, right?
I saw that document.
Okay. This is a document that I will tell you that I created based on all the information that your company and the others in this case have given me. I give you that 23. Sorry.
You done with 22?
Yes.
You done with that one?
Yes. Exhibit 23 is a summary that we have done of different groups that Purdue, J&J, and Cephalon and Teva donated to. And we also have Livestrong, and I'll tell you why in a minute. You see those numbers?
I do.
Okay, I'll represent to you that those were pulled from different discovery items we have in this case. Now, if we'll go to, for example, the American Pain Foundation, we see here $3.667 million between 97 and 2012 went to the American Pain Foundation. You see that?
Yes, I do.
And we see $633,300 from J&J.
Correct.
And $60,300 from Cephalon and Teva.
Yes, I do.
Okay. Now, if you look up at the American Academy of Pain Medicine, it's $2.8 million from Purdue, $1.03 million from J&J, and $1.9 million.
Okay, yes, I see. I'm sorry.
You see here, there's a collective total of $32,327,771 by Purdue, J&J, Cephalon, Teva, and Livestrong. You see that?
I do.
Now, you see the Pain and Policy Studies Group?
I do.
You see over there where Livestrong gave $1.975 million?
Yes.
Now, Livestrong, or the Lance Armstrong Foundation, was at various times a member of the Pain Care Forum. You aware of that?
I am aware that there was an organization, I don't know that it was named Livestrong.
Well, it was the Lance Armstrong Foundation, and you have a bit of a problem, and now it's called Livestrong.
Okay.
You know who Lance Armstrong is, right?
I certainly heard of him.
World's most famous bicycling
Yes. I
pro.
happen not to be a sports fan, but yes,
Well, he's also disgraced as one of the greatest cheaters in the history of sports.
I've read about him.
Right. And his group is part of Pain Care Forum. And
There was a group that was called the Lance Armstrong Organization, I think, and I believe I can't read to you, I could if I had it, but I don't know what their mission was, other than it was to address cancer.
okay, how much money was given to PPSG?
I mean, I can only read from your chart.
Please do.
$3,123,000 over the, whatever it was, 12-year period,
By all of y'all collectively or just by Purdue?
by everyone collectively.
Okay, thank you. We don't have a lot of time left, so I'm gonna focus on a couple of things or something I want you to look at, please. I'm gonna have you look at 3 pages and I'm gonna walk you through it. And I want you to see this. So this is first, there's an email from Robin Cohen. And it's dated August 5th, 2011. You see that? I did. Robin Cohen again is the National Advocacy Director for Pain IM at Johnson & Johnson. You see that? Let's turn to the very first page. It says, demonstrate leadership and advocacy for HCPs and patient access. You see that?
Yes, I do.
And it says 2011-12 advocacy lunch point. You see that?
I did.
Okay, I'm not asking about all the stuff Jansen did, but I want to turn to where you mentioned. If you'll turn to page 36. Bob Ryan on camera will say 36.
Page 36.
Yes, sir. Now, if you look at page 36, in the bottom left-hand corner, there's a logo. What is that logo?
Jansen.
Okay, at the top, tell the jury what it says in blue.
Partners Relationship - Purdue Case Study.
All right, let's look what Johnson & Johnson had to say about you. Read for the jury what Johnson & Johnson said about Purdue here in this internal confidential draft. What does it say?
Partners for 5 years, excellent communication.
Partners for 5 years. See that?
I do.
And then it says something else. What does it say?
At the same table for most partner meetings.
Okay, let's stop there. At the same table for most partner meetings. It says that, right? Right?
Right.
What does this document say? J&J internally, confidential, not one the public to see. What does it say about their relationship with you? What table did they sit at, sir?
I have no idea.
Well, it says it. Does it say at a different table or something else? What does it say?
I'm sorry, I mean, this is the first time I've seen this, but,
What word did they use?
well, they say at the same table for most partner meetings.
Okay, and then it goes on to say, key pay meetings, right?
Key pain meetings.
Key IM and family practice mid-level meetings, right?
Correct.
And key policy meetings includes Pain Care Forum, Purdue lobbyist as moderator. It says that, right?
That's what it says.
It goes on to talk about the Purdue Healthcare Alliance Development Team. You see that?
Yes.
And Purdue Resources. One of those, Partners Against Pain, something you're very familiar with, right?
I'm not very familiar with Partners Against Pain.
Mr. Beckworth, you've gone over your 6 hours. I'm happy to let you finish this page and we got the document if you want to finish it up.
You bet. So let's just go through this. We'll wrap up on the page. J&J was in the Pain Care Forum with you since 2005, right?
They were, yes, a participant in the Pain Care Forum.
This document right here shows that they call themselves as partners for 5 years with J&J, right?
The document says partners for 5 years.
Okay, now this document is dated 2011. We showed it on the first page, right?
Yes, you did.
If you'll do the math, 2011 minus 5 years takes us back to 2006, correct?
Correct.
So 5 years would include 2006, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Purdue pled guilty to a federal felony in 2007. We've established that, right?
Yes, we did discuss that earlier.
Johnson & Johnson has a code of conduct that requires it to hold any partners accountable to the same level of ethics and rules that Johnson & Johnson holds itself to. Okay? Set that as true for a moment. Now here's my question. At any point in time, did Johnson & Johnson ever come to you as moderator of the Pain Care Forum and tell you that they would not continue to engage in the collaborative efforts of the Pain Care Forum with Purdue? Ever?
Well, no one ever communicated to me a desire not to participate, but again, the Pain Care Forum was a forum and collaboration existed for those who decided to do so.
Did Janssen ever come and tell you, in any role or capacity you had at Purdue, they did not want to be in business with you? Ever?
No.
Did they ever tell you they didn't want to be a partner with you?
No.
Did they ever tell you they didn't want to be in the Pain Care Forum with you?
No.
Did they ever tell you they wanted to disassociate themselves from you?
No.
At all times, from 2005 through the time of this document, Janssen or Johnson & Johnson was a member of the Pain Care Forum. Correct?
They were an organization that participated in the Pain Care Forum.
And they were a member of the IWG, the Internal Industry Working Group, weren't they?
If they made a long-acting opioid, they would have been, yes.
And they were,
I'm sorry, I'm not avoiding you. I don't remember the 20-something companies. I just remember there were 20-something companies.
and they were a member of Pharma with you, correct?
They are a member of Pharma.
Okay. And as this document says, they were at the same table with you for most part of meetings, correct?
That's what the document says.
And that concludes the complete deposition. So I don't know what your preference is at this time. I'm sure you might want to take a break, but we will need to offer the exhibits in. And then if we're going to go to 5, we could, after a break, start one more that'll help us speed along next.
Let's offer the exhibits and let's roll right into the next one.
Perfect. Okay. Mr. Cutler? While they're getting this, we have Quartz 42, the photograph that we took of the bottles, pill bottles.
Yes, ma'am.
What do you plan? What's the next? What's the next? What's the next? Thank you.
All right, I've marked as Court Exhibit 42 a photograph of the placebo pills in the pill container.
Your Honor, this it's exhibit S1413. This is an email from Kathleen Foley to Richard Sadler, was produced by Purdue in this litigation. PLPC 030000207179, and it is the subject of a business record stipulation from Purdue. Copies that over here. The laundry list of documents that are subject to that stipulation. You should be able to find the exhibit number of this one. Yes. This is the updated stipulation.
Your Honor, we still object to this one being Thursday. There's also some motions One, 2, 3, and 7. So,
those motions in limine were denied also, I think, substitute the business record stipulation is not hearsay. It's also, Purdue was a party in this case. It's an additional party punished. They did not directly pretend that they were co-conspirators with J&J. Just heard about their testimony on that. So this is not hearsay, but subject to the stipulation and as an additional party punished.
Allegation of additional order of conspiracy.
Your Honor, there's certainly an allegation of conspiracy and pre-trial order. It's a large part of this case.
Hearsay against different part, I'm not familiar with what it is. She's talking about preserving business records affidavit, which takes care of hearsay and all of this. Absolutely.
Yes.
I'm going to overrule the defense objection and admit States 1413 and I'll note the stipulation by the Purdue defendant. Well, the stipulation has been presented to me.
Next round is to admit S1417. It's another document produced by Purdue in this litigation. It's also subject to the same business record stipulation that we just need to do. And for those three reasons, it's both authentic and not hearsay. For its admissions.
Your Honor, same objections. And hearsay sections specifically motions in limine to the
I will overrule the defendant's objections and admit States 1417 to the evidence.
Honor, that's the city provision S1418. Another email that we have produced by Purdue in this litigation. I believe that is subject to that same stipulation.
Good, how are you? Hey, you guys showed demo exhibits 5 and 20. They're not subject to our stipulations. Exhibit 20 in particular was part of an agreement that would be kept confidential. If those are in your power to admit them, can you not do it right now so we can try to work out an agreement with respect to those two?
I'm sure that'll be fine. I actually don't know yet.
So, Brad, you guys showed demo exhibits 5
That's the defendant's
which
objection.
are not part of the stipulations.
It is, so there,
Okay, I just want to make sure they don't get admitted.
I
think Trey tried to make sure.
It is the subject to as you can see, this is stipulation number 6. I believe it is subject to this stipulation, it's subject to a Purdue stipulation. I can confirm that with you all.
Numbers 5 and 20, but I don't know the page label numbers. You did play 20, I know that. And exhibit 5 is. You didn't play 1, you played the second one. And so it's the first time you played the test on the page. The second time you played the test on the page.
clear, this exhibit is an email between Bert Rosen and Robin Hogan. And it is subject to the stipulation that was presented by the state earlier. Overrule the defendant's objection and admit 1418 into the evidence.
Now, the next exhibit is states 1419. This is actually tethered to which is subject of a similar stipulation to the which has not been signed. So the government committee will to address this document.
Yeah, we won't address this one. I'll wait until present a stipulation for Teva.
We did. Do you have a copy? Do you have a copy of this?
S1420. This is a Janssen email attachment.
I've seen this stepping stones to
It is
success.
shown,
Is that part of Ms. Jim Eshelman's testimony?
Yes, it wasn't all of the time, but
so
we'll go ahead.
Your Honor, at this time, we call by video designation Aaron Gilson. Aaron Gilson was at the Pain Policy Studies Group in Wisconsin that you've heard about.
How long is Mr. Gilson's deposition?
I think it's right at our part's about 120, and I think with the defendant's counter designations, it's a 2-hour total. Is that right?
I'd like to stop it at 5.
Yes, sir. We will stop it at 5. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Had some lobbying to finish earlier, but we're gonna get on 5.
Protected activity, yes, Your Honor. I don't know what you're talking about.
Judge, do you have the hard stuff in time? Do you need to talk to you about
Nope, I can talk to you. Sure. Yep.
Your Honor, if I may approach, I have a binder for this video.
Sure. Give it back to me.
You tell the jury your name, please, sir. Are you with something called the Pain and Policy Studies Group? No. When was the last time you were there? December 31st of 2017. Okay, but prior to that time, you were employed within the Pain and Policy Studies Group? I have always been employed at the University of Wisconsin, but I worked in the program of the Pain and Policy Studies Group. If I use the acronym PPSG, can we agree that I'm referring to the Pain and Policy Studies Group? Yes? Yes. Yes. So throughout the day, I will, from time to time, refer to it as PPSG, and you and I understand that refers to the Pain and Policy Studies Group, correct? Yes. Okay, let's go back further. What is the mission statement or purpose of PPSG? PPSG was formed in 1996 based on an understanding that people with unremitting pain have increased quality of life. And so the mission of the PPSG, and that healthcare practitioners have an insufficient understanding of the policies that govern their healthcare practice. And so the mission of the PPSG was to conduct policy research and to inform healthcare professionals about the content of current policies under which they practice. And it was, the group was founded by a former staff member of the Wisconsin Controlled Substances Board. And so he had a passion for decreasing drug abuse and diversion. Some of his work on the Controlled Substances Board was to identify physicians who were misprescribing and to develop interventions for those physicians. Who was that person? David Jorgensen. And there is no longer a PPSG? To the best of my knowledge, it is no longer a program within the University of Wisconsin. You are not a medical doctor? No. PPSG was involved with something called the Federation of State Medical Groups, correct? That is correct. And it was also involved in something called the Pain Care Forum, correct? You also served as an advisor with respect to a book that was written called Responsible Opioid Prescribing, correct? That is correct. And part of your participation with the Federation of State Medical Boards and that book was to attempt to influence policy decision-making at the state level, correct? It was an attempt to have regulators address cases of people with pain so that those people with pain would be treated appropriately and fairly and be better treated. You wanted to influence the adoption of guidelines, correct? Part of our work was to educate states for adopting policies. Yeah. Policies, guidelines, and regulations, correct? Yes. All right, let's turn to page 4. Do you see where there's at the bottom bold italicized statement that says Pain Care Forum? Yes. Read for the jury what you wrote. Activities of the Pain Care Forum exchanged information and ideas about pain policy and legislation and supported collaborative actions about common issues related to the effects of policy on patient care. There was something omitted there in your statement, I'm not suggesting it's intentional, but under pain care form, there are 6 words. What does that say?
Organizational collaborative with no single affiliation.
Now, the word collaborative is a word that you chose to put there, correct?
That is correct.
Then in the activities section, it says, and supported collaborative actions about common issues related to the effects of policy on patient care, correct?
That is correct.
Your words, collaborative actions, correct?
That is correct.
About common issues, correct?
That was the purpose of the group, yes.
And it says here that your membership was September 2007 to July 2016, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. You then list editorial committee, and there it's the Federation of State Medical Boards Research and Education Foundation, correct?
That is correct.
It says you serve as an associate editor for Responsible Opioid Prescribing, a Physician's Guide, correct?
Yes.
The Federation of State Medical Boards is listed as a pain care form participating organization on Exhibit 2, correct?
Yes.
You served as associate editor for the book that states it was primarily authored by Scott Fishman, correct?
Yes.
That's Responsible Opioid Prescribing, Physician's Guide?
Yes.
The Responsible Opioid Prescribing book was widely disseminated, correct?
Yes.
So you had no intent to limit its reach geographically, correct?
We weren't the organization distributing it, so I don't have any understanding of that.
You were an associate editor.
Yes.
You understand the book was published.
Yes.
You understand it was disseminated.
Yes.
Let's start with somebody that comes in to a doctor and is prescribed a Schedule II opioid for chronic pain treatment. What is the addiction rate of that person for taking a drug for 30 days?
That's a very individual situation, and I think the rate would vary depending on the person's characteristic.
What do you understand addiction to be?
A chronic disease that's characterized by compulsive use and inability to cease using a substance despite harm to oneself.
Using that definition, what is the addiction rate of someone who takes an opioid for chronic pain treatment under the care of a primary care physician?
I'm unaware of evidence that would suggest that specific situation.
You're unaware of any such data?
I could certainly discuss data if it were presented to me, but the data that I'm usually aware of are data that's the result of population samples. So it's not specific to people who are being treated for medical purposes.
So your answer wouldn't change for 1996, would it?
I believe the national addiction rate has remained relatively consistent.
In 1996, using your definition of addiction, you did not know what the addiction rate of a person taking an opioid for chronic pain treatment under the care of a primary care physician was, did you?
I would say that in the general area of pain management, that is a correct response. That is correct statement.
My statement is correct.
Yes.
And you did not know in 1997 either, correct?
That is correct.
And you did not know in 1998, correct?
That's correct.
You did not know in 1999, correct?
That's correct. I don't know if we know today.
You did not know in 2000, correct?
That is correct.
You did not know in 2001, correct? You did not know in 2002.
Correct.
You did not know in 2003.
Correct.
You did not know in 2004.
Correct.
You did not know in 2005. You did not know in 2006. You did not know in 2007.
Yes.
You did not know in 2008. You did not know in 2009. You did not know in 2010.
Correct.
You did not know in 2011. You did not know in 2012.
Correct.
You did not know in 2013.
Correct.
You did not know in 2014. You did not know in 2015. You did not know in 2016. You did not know in 2017. And you did not know today. Sir, we discussed earlier that on your resume, one of the things you've done is be involved in some type of capacity with the book, Responsible Opioid Prescribing, a Physician's Guide, correct? And while I've handed you excerpts, you're familiar with the entire book, correct? Not from a memory test standpoint, but you know what the book is.
Yes.
Okay. So if we turn to the first page here, on the copyright page, it says this book is sponsored by a consortium of organizations with a common interest in promoting safe and effective pain management. You see that?
Yes.
The list, let's just go through it. The Adult Laboratories is listed. It's also listed on Exhibit 2 as a pain care forum participating organization.
That's correct.
As is the Alliance of State Pain Initiatives.
Correct.
The American Academy of Pain Medicine also is a pain care forum member.
Correct.
American Pain Foundation.
Correct.
American Society for Pain Management Nursing.
Correct.
The Center for Practical Bioethics.
Correct.
Cephalon.
Yes.
Indo Pharmaceuticals.
Correct.
The Federation of State Medical Boards.
Correct.
The National Pain Foundation.
Correct.
Pain and Policy Studies Group.
Correct.
Purdue Pharma.
Correct.
All of those that we just went through are listed on Exhibit 4 as a consortium of organizations with a common interest in promoting safe and effective pain management, correct?
Along with SAMHSA, yes.
And that's correct, but the ones that we listed
Yes.
are also members of the Pain Care Forum as participating organizations, correct? What did PPSG do to sponsor this book?
Beyond my editorial assistance, I am unaware.
Tell the jury what you did in the scope of editorial assistance.
I reviewed draft narratives of the book.
So on page 62 and 63, we pulled out the part I want to discuss with you. On page 62, the book talks about pseudo-addiction.
Correct.
What in your mind is pseudo-addiction?
It is the misclassification of a person who is being undertreated for pain, who is seeking controlled substances to minimize that pain, and yet they are designated as persons with an addictive disease.
Pseudo-addiction is a word that was coined by David Haddix, correct?
In co-authorship with his mentor at the Wisconsin College of Medicine, Dave Weissman.
Right here in Wisconsin.
That is correct.
Did you know that David Weissman was a speaker paid by Purdue as part of the Speakers Bureau?
No, I did not.
Did you know that David Haddix was paid to be a speaker by Purdue?
No, I did not.
Was your answer no, you did not?
No, I did not.
You did know, though, that David Haddix became an employee of Purdue.
Yes.
The DSM is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, correct?
That is correct.
And there's no definition of pseudo-addiction
That is correct.
anywhere?
There is a definition of pseudo-addiction in the article that was co-authored by Dave Haddix. Yes.
That's the first use of it, to your knowledge, correct?
To my knowledge.
You familiar
That's
with,
the first use of the term, to my knowledge.
you're familiar with the phrase coining or coined a term?
Yes.
And you understand that generally to mean that somebody created a term?
Correct.
David Haddix and Weissman in that article that you referred to coined the term pseudo-addiction, correct?
To the best of my knowledge, that term had not been used prior to that article.
So they created or correct?
Correct.
And then you relied upon pseudo-addiction throughout your career, the term.
That is correct.
And this book, of which you were providing editorial assistance, used the term pseudo-patient in it, correct?
That is correct.
And one of the purposes of this book was to go to state policy and regulators. Sorry, one of the purposes of this book was to go to state policymakers and regulators to read the content of the book, correct?
Yes, that was the basis, the basic objective, yes.
Why does the book list less indicative behavior?
May I see the section of the book that was?
I don't have a full copy with me.
That's difficult for me to discuss, and I don't have context for how this was referenced in the book.
Right, because if we go to the first page of that exhibit, what's this title of this book?
Responsible opioid prescribing.
They didn't want you to answer that before. Let's go.
Responsible opioid prescribing.
But this is a book about responsible opioid prescribing, correct?
That's correct.
That was intended to be read by other people, correct?
That is correct.
For the purpose of providing education about how to prescribe opioids responsibly, correct?
That is correct.
And this book was sponsored by Purdue Pharma, correct?
That is correct.
Cephalon, correct?
That is correct.
Indo, correct?
That is correct.
All three manufacturers of pharmaceutical opioids, correct? All three of those
All
companies
three of those companies,
are manufacturers of controlled Schedule II narcotic opiates, correct?
to the best of my knowledge, that is the case.
And this book was also sponsored by the Pain and Policy Studies Group, correct?
That is correct.
So, when the doctor is in his or her clinic making an assessment, the author of this book, the sponsors of this book, intended that one of the things the doctor should consider was what can be learned from this book. True or false?
That would seem to be the case.
So what I said is true.
Yes.
True.
Yes.
And does that mean that PPSG is or was an advocate for patients with pain?
Being a University of Wisconsin employee, we can't be advocates. That's against the regulations, but we can provide education and outreach.
So you weren't supposed to be an advocate for anything?
I consider myself an educator, and I assist with the understanding of these issues.
Now, when you put out the Responsible Opioid Prescribing book, the sponsors and the author of that, at the end was an appendix that was the model policy for the use of controlled substances for the treatment of pain.
Yes.
Now, tell the jury what the intent of the model policy was.
It was to improve consistency among states, among regulatory policies designed to govern the use of controlled substances for the treatment of pain.
And y'all wanted these policies to be adopted by as many states as possible, correct?
Yes.
Well, you knew that manufacturers of opioids would take that policy or those guidelines and use them for those purposes.
Yes, that would be the case.
You were on the pain care form with Johnson & Johnson, correct?
Yes.
Janssen was a funder of or sponsor of the PPSG, correct?
Janssen was sponsored. I have to look at the spreadsheet.
Okay. You don't have reason to dispute that.
Correct. Not at this time.
I'm going to hand you Exhibit 6. Sir, tell the jury what this document 6 is.
It is a research article published in JAMA, Journal of the American Medical Association in 2000. That was the first of its kind of the medical use and abuse of opioid analgesics over a period of time.
And this document was published in JAMA, which is a journal of, what is JAMA say?
Journal of the American Medical Association.
And this was published in 2000, correct?
Yes,
Now, Mr. Jorgensen's also a stated author,
that is correct.
and he was at PPSG.
Yes,
At the bottom, it shows a financial disclosure that he received honoraria from Knoll Pharmaceutical, Purdue Pharma, and Janssen Pharmaceutical, correct?
that is correct.
And June Dahl is also listed,
That is correct.
and it notes that she serves on the Speakers Bureau of Purdue Pharma as a consultant for Knoll Pharmaceuticals, correct?
Correct.
Sir, when you published this article that was put out in 2000, correct?
Yes, it was.
But it was based on the data from 1990 to 1996, correct?
That is correct.
And we'll just look at the first page there where it talks about conclusions. Read for the jury the conclusion you stated.
The trend of increasing medical use of opioid analgesics to treat pain does not appear to contribute to increases in the health consequences of opioid analgesic abuse.
The concept there is that opioids have been using increasingly to treat pain from 1990 to the time to 96, okay? Is that correct?
Yes.
And that during that time, there did not appear to be an increase in the health consequences of opioid abuse, correct?
There did not seem to be a notable increase in abuse. Yes.
Now, while this report was 2000, it used something called DAWN data. And DAWN data is data from the Drug Abuse Warning Network, correct?
That is correct.
And it also used data from ARCOS, the Automation of Reports and Consolidated Order System, correct?
That is correct.
And although this report came out in 2000, it only used data from 1996 and prior, correct?
That is correct.
Well, your paper says that you used DAWN data because, this is a quote, that was the data, quote, available at the time this study was begun.
That is correct.
So if available data existed between 1996 and 2000, it was not used in this article, was it?
That is correct.
By the time the 2000 JAMA article of Exhibit 6 was published, it was known that between 1996 and 2000, there was increased incidence of abuse and aversion related to the use of oxycodone and prescribed.
It was beginning to be known. Yes.
And so for any person acting on behalf of a manufacturer of any of opioids containing the substances that issued in paper, for anyone to use that paper to suggest that abuse and aversion was not increasing, that would have been deceptive.
It would have been deceptive when there was evidence to the contrary.
And there was evidence to the contrary.
Yes, which is why we included in the article discussion that any increases in abuse and aversion that may occur in the future have to be identified and addressed quickly.
You knew that your 2000 paper was being used deceptively.
We knew it was being disseminated.
And you knew it was being disseminated by folks associated with drug manufacturers for the purpose of trying to show that abuse and aversion weren't actually increasing along with prescriptions.
I'm not familiar at what time you did that.
It concerns you enough that you did a new study in paper, correct?
When we heard the information.
And when you heard what information?
The calls, the identification that this was occurring.
And you wanted to correct it.
We wanted to see what the national data sets were showing.
And the national data showed that in fact, from 1996 forward, abuse and aversion had increased. Your answer was?
That is correct.
Well, you must only copy I have. Oh, okay. Oh, you okay, it's awesome. We'll mark your second paper as Exhibit 7. Exhibit 7 is an August 2nd, 2004 article called A Reassessment of Trends in the Medical Use and Abuse of Opioid Analgesics and Implications for Diversion Control, 1997 to 2002, correct? Correct.
Yes, that is true.
And same authors?
Yes,
You wrote this article, sir?
I was one of the authors, yes.
You noted in this article that there was, in fact, an increased amount of the instances of abuse and diversion, correct?
That's correct.
Does your paper disclose that PPSG received funding from opioid manufacturers?
No, it doesn't.
Does your paper disclose the personal financial payment that June Dahl received from Purdue Pharma?
No, it does not.
Does it disclose that Edgar Adams received money as a consultant for certain drug manufacturers? It does acknowledge the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation for its funding, correct?
Yes.
You aware that Robert Wood Johnson, when he was living, was related to the founders of Johnson & Johnson?
Yes, and Robert Wood Johnson is the largest public health philanthropic organization now and then, so.
Does your paper disclose any ties between that foundation and Johnson & Johnson or Janssen? Does your paper disclose that David Jorgensen was paid as a speaker's bureau member by Purdue?
No, it does not.
You know that by 2000, it was known that incidents of abuse and diversion of Schedule II opioid narcotics were increasing. You know that.
That abuse was increasing, yes.
And that with increased prescribing, we also saw increased abuse and diversion.
Increased availability and increased abuse, yes.
And so from 1996 to 2000, we know that that abuse and diversion did in fact increase, correct?
To 2002, 97 to 2002, yes.
Let me show you Exhibit 8.
Thank you.
Sir, you see on page 9 what Exhibit 2?
Yes,
Did you look at it?
yes,
And there it lists the pain care form director. And the first person under Purdue Pharma LP was who?
Pamela Bennett.
You know Pamela Bennett?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now we're on Exhibit 8.
Yes.
You see Exhibit 8 as a document that bears a date stamp PKY 180377907. You see that at the bottom?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Exhibit 8 is a letter written by Pamela Bennett, correct?
Yes, it is.
It bears her name on the top of each page, correct?
Yes, it does.
And it has her name and signature at the bottom of the second page, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And this is a letter to Zach Gauklin, editor of the Portland Press Herald. You see that?
Yes.
You'll see in the middle of the first page, she says, as we continue to see, the media has the power to both perpetuate and strengthen existing myths with sensationalized news. I'll stop there. The word she used was what?
Sensationalized news.
And you used sensationalized as well in your second article, right? We just went over that?
I just want to make sure.
You bet.
The contents. Sensationalized coverage of drug use.
Goes on to say that evokes fear or anger or to provide accurate, well-researched, and well-balanced information that serves to educate and empower consumers, correct?
Yes.
Now let's go to the next paragraph. It says, the article did not discuss the thousands of patients who are undertreated, so undertreated in fact that the Joint Commission on the Accreditation of Hospital Organizations issued new pain standards in January of 2000. You see that statement?
Yes, I do.
We haven't gotten to that today, but you are aware that Purdue worked in concert with the Joint Commission on the Accreditation of Hospital Organization to issue those new pain standards, right?
You're saying Purdue Pharma worked with Jacob?
You bet. Do you not know
I
that?
did not know
That's not disclosed there, though. There's no disclosure about Purdue being involved in any way with the JCAHO, is there?
that. No.
Now, if you look to the next sentence there, it says, including facts from peer-reviewed medical journals could have provided balance in the article. For example, in the May 5, 2000 JAMA article, quote, trends in medical use and abuse of opioid analgesics. Let's just stop right there. That's the article that you wrote, correct?
That's the 2000 article
That you wrote.
that I was co-author.
Let's go on to what it says. When referencing your article, it says, it states that although opioid use is increasing, there is not an increase in the health consequences of opioid analgesic abuse. Now, your article didn't say that, right?
That is true.
But your article is based on data up to 1996, correct?
That is correct.
It had no data from 1996 to 2000, correct? Or from after 1996 to 2000.
Yes.
And you knew that by 2000, incidents of abuse and diversion had increased with increasing availability of Schedule II opioids.
We were hearing reports. Yes.
So let's see what Pam Bennett from Purdue says next. Would you read it for the jury?
The article failed to mention that alcohol, not opioids, is the primary substance that is abused, nor did it mention the fact that those with substance use issues will use whatever substance is readily available. I have enclosed a copy for your information.
Do you believe, as the author of that article, that it would be truthful as of August 22nd, 2000, to disseminate your JAMA article from 2000 for the purpose of suggesting that as of 2000, incidents of abuse and diversion had not increased along with the increasing availability of opioid analgesics?
It certainly would have been clearer had she included the time frame of data analysis from the article
Because that was necessary.
to contextualize the findings.
Sir, I'm going to hand you what we'll mark as Exhibit 9.
Oh, yes. I did cut it.
Exhibit 9 is a slide deck, and I'll let you look through it. Exhibit 9 is a slide deck from Lynn Pelosi entitled The Prescription Drug Overdose Epidemic and the Role of PBMPs in Stopping It. All right, let's go through this for a minute. This refers to the prescription drug overdose epidemic. You see that on the top of the page?
Yes, I do.
Let's go to the third page.
Slide 3.
Yes. It says that early surveillance data failed to detect a problem. Dawn 1990 to 96. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And it cites something. What does it cite?
It cites the 2000 JAMA article.
And here it shows a graph on the left side that shows the number of ED visits from abuse in the emergency department. You see that?
Yes, I do.
And it shows from 90 to 96. You see that?
Yes.
And it shows oxycodone decreasing every year from 90 to 96, correct?
Yes.
Let's turn to the next one. What is the title of this page, sir?
Perhaps because some data was left out. Dawn 1990 through 1998 data available when Johnson et al. Published.
Okay. So let's look at slide on page 4 based on the data from 96 forward. What happened with oxycodone?
Yes, there was an increase.
What happened with hydrocodone?
There was an even greater increase.
What happened with morphine?
An increase.
talked earlier, I was giving you some examples about Salesforce and how they were used. Remember that? Okay. So Exhibit 11 is a document dated June 12, 2000. You see that?
Yes, I do.
For the record, it has a base stamp at the bottom, JNMS 0275757. Okay, Exhibit 11 is dated June 12, 2000, correct, sir?
Yes.
And at the bottom, it bears a name and a logo. Would you tell the jury what that logo is?
Yes.
And who is it addressed to?
275 Field Salesforce.
From who?
Medical Services, Product Management and Sales Training.
There, in the first paragraph, would you read for the jury what it says?
The entire paragraph?
Please.
Attached for your review is an article published in the April 5th issue of the Journal of the American Medical Association, JAMA, which discusses the use and abuse of opioid analgesics from 1990 to 1996. The authors found that the present trend of increasing medical use of opioid analgesics to treat pain does not appear to contribute to opioid analgesic abuse. This article should be helpful in discussing these issues with your physicians and should enhance your understanding of the potential for abuse or misuse in the context of pain management. Below is a summary of the article, a copy of which is attached.
At the bottom, it says the authors write that the trend of increasing medical use of opioid analgesics to treat pain does not appear to be contributing to increases in the health consequences of opioid analgesic abuse. It says that right there, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Now let's look at the next page. It says limitations of the study are excerpted below. You see that?
Yes, it.
Okay. Now it says that Don may underestimate the extent of the drug abuse problem because it measures only those episodes that result in admission to an emergency department, correct?
That is correct.
It doesn't say anything about the fact that your study stopped in 1996.
Well, it does in the first paragraph that I read.
Where? The beginning of the
Yes,
5 years?
1990 to 1996.
But it doesn't show anything about data that has existed between 96 and 2000 suggesting increases in those ED visits, right?
Which conflicts with the following sentence, which says that the present trend is really slightly past trend.
So let's the jury hear you instead of me. You're saying that the author refers to this as a present trend and increasing?
The authors of this update?
Let's start up and be clear. Two authors of the issue. One is Jansen, who wrote this memo, right?
Yes.
And one is you and your colleagues who wrote the JAMA report, right? So the author of the memo that is Exhibit 11 is referring to you as an author. What did they say about it?
It states, the authors found that the present trend of increasing medical use of opioid analgesics to treat pain does not appear to contribute to opioid analgesic abuse.
That was not a true statement, was it?
This is not what I would consider a present trend,
That is,
which is defined in the previous sentence.
right. So that statement is a misrepresentation of what your article was about.
It's an inaccurate representation.
Let's look at the bottom. What else does it say?
The very bottom,
Yes.
the authors write that the present trend of increasing medical use of opioid analgesics to treat pain does not appear to be contributing to increases in the health consequences of opioid analgesic abuse.
That statement's not accurate either, is it?
The use of the term present trend shouldn't relate to 1990 to 1996.
It's an inaccurate statement.
It's referring to 4-year-old data.
So it's inaccurate.
Yes.
Now, this author said this article should be helpful in discussing these issues with your physicians and should enhance your understanding of the potential for abuse or misuse in the context of pain management. Says that right there.
Yes.
Exhibit 12.
It's a good place to stop. We can resume right there when we begin Monday. We will adjourn now and let's begin at 9 a.m. Monday morning.
Thank you, Your Honor. Y'all have a good weekend.
You too.
Okay.